Beach Town Council. The next item on the agenda is fee schedule.
So you would have received this morning a copy of the fee schedule. There are no changes to that proposed or recommended. However, well, it was part of last year's budget ordinance, and it will be a part of this one, so.
Is there any discussion necessary to, with regard to it, the proposed? That was quick.
I will share that staff did review the fees to make sure they were appropriate and reasonable. And yes.
All right, the next item is revenue.
Okay, so what you received this morning, you have 4 pages relating, I'm sorry, what you received this morning is a revised summary. Oh, I'm sorry, Rich, did you have a question? The revenue, we have a summary sheet, 2 sheets, sorry, that takes all the funds and summarizes the revenue plus transfers in minus expenditures. So that's just a summary of all the funds, so you have some frame of reference. In your packet that on Monday, in the gray envelope, you received 2 pages of the detail for the revenue for the general fund. And that's where the ad valorem taxes are, that's where the local option sales tax is, and every other revenue thing that the town, that regularly funds the town operations. Oh,
Yeah, I'm looking for this too.
okay, all right, this is the revenue detail. So it has property taxes, intergovernmental taxes, ABC revenue, permits and fees, and it's labeled Revenue Budget Workbook, General Fund, revised May 1st.
I don't see it either.
It was in your gray envelope on Monday night. You got it on Monday.
It's the one dated,
Okay,
May
so that's why I
1st.
was looking for this morning.
Okay, yeah, this, yeah.
Are we talking not total general?
And then the
Okay.
one you got this morning,
fund
which
summary?
has revisions on it, is,
You know, that's one of the reasons why we're getting too many pieces of paper.
Yes.
And I can't, I'm still not sure I've got the right page that you're talking
No,
about.
you don't.
All
You don't.
fund summary.
No, you don't. We got it
well,
Monday.
today you received an all fund summary with changes on it, with revisions on it. So it
No,
says,
she's just telling me it's not it.
and we have to fix that.
that's the.
It says
Should
72,000,
be in the
right,
front
so,
of my thing.
We got it on Monday.
yeah.
So that means,
But there,
This
and
is
then
the
there's
all
also
funds.
that, remember in your, I said I corrected
Does this sit
it
right
in the
here?
email. Yes, that's it, that's it,
That's the all fund summary.
okay.
But
So.
the
just to
one
be-
we have to, you're gonna talk about, that we should have in front of us is the one with the brown
No,
line
Yes.
on the bottom.
Yeah, just
Okay.
like that, yeah.
but this doesn't have the amounts coming in. I thought, I'm sorry.
It does, yes,
It is
the
revenues.
summary has revenue and
I see
transfers.
general fund transfers, parable fund, sunset and sunset.
Was his general fund revenue before transfers? It was just under general fund. So general fund.
All right,
revenue.
but this
So we
doesn't,
start-
I'm sorry, I'm looking for a sheet that has sales tax coming in, all of these funds.
Okay, well, that's the other thing we're gonna be looking at.
That's that.
Okay,
This is
let's actually, it'd probably be easiest if we do the general fund first. And that's the sheet, Carol, that you're looking for. It says Revenue Budget Workbook, General Fund, revised May 1st. And it has property taxes, intergovernmental taxes, ABC revenue.
I know.
Carol, it was stapled to the side, so, is that stapled? Yeah, keep, that's it. It's the next page, there you go. That one, it was stapled to the side.
Yes. Well, I'm looking at the property taxes, the 5-1 that you said we were gonna look at.
I think quite literally, we're all on the same page now.
Bonnie, tell us how you would think, how staff would think it would be best to proceed. I have some immediate questions. I can ask them, or you can go through a spiel.
Well, there were, the other day when we talked, when revenue was first presented to you, nothing has really changed. I was just gonna, again, point out the highlights, that it is a 16-cent tax increase, tax rate for ad valorem taxes. It's based on the assessed value as of the 2016 tax year,
Right?
minus or with provision for a 98% collection rate, which is, well, it's almost 98% collection rate. So it's a conservative number. It assumes no increase in property value, no increase in properties, and also no decreases in properties. Because throughout the year, the tax office, Brunswick County Tax Office, will regularly change the total pool of taxable property. Of course, the value isn't changed unless new properties are added. or
Assessment
taken.
hasn't changed.
The assessment hasn't changed.
There's
Correct.
$100,000 more in the recommended revenue budget, I guess, for 2018 versus what
Yes.
what we assumed in the 17 budget.
Yes.
The tax rate didn't change, that's the
Right.
same. Where does that $100,000 come from? It isn't from
Well-
increased taxes,
Right.
is it
It-
brand new buildings that were built
No,
during
it-
that
It
time?
appears that fiscal 17 was under budgeted.
Okay,
If
Yeah,
you look at,
16,
look at,
look at fiscal 16.
yeah, 2.3 million and 2.2 million in fiscal 17. We're bringing in almost 2.4 million.
I thought maybe it was new homes or renovations or things like that that were done during the course of that year.
There are a number of pieces to why it changes.
Okay, all right, but it's
but
things
it
like
is-
that.
But this is a conservative recommendation based on what we're projected to bring in. We're already on track to bring in for fiscal 17.
And you're showing an increased revenue to us from local optional sales tax of 41,000. But that still doesn't include the legislation that
Correct.
we aren't really sure where that is gonna go.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
And what that's based on is the League of Municipalities puts out a projection
Yes.
for all of the intergovernmental taxes and fees we receive. And that is the projection for the for all of the items that are under intergovernmental taxes and fees. All of those are based on they actually gave us a projected change of 16 to 17 and now 17 to 18.
Okay,
So,
thank you, that's clear.
okay.
Just to simplify this in some way, I have estimated that we will have a surplus of $390,000
18 or 17?
From what?
between the revenue and the expenses.
For which
In what year?
For 18.
The current, year ending June 30th or next year's projected budget?
The budget, fiscal year 18 budget.
18, the
18.
projected budget, okay.
We have revenues, I'm rounding, 5983, and expenses of 5593.
I
Now-
agree.
This budget was based on a 16-cent tax rate,
Correct.
but it looks as though that we could reduce taxes,
Well, one of the,
or am I
Before-
missing something?
well, I mean, you can always do that. that's,
There's money in the, I mean, this surplus to me tells me that we could have I haven't done the calculation, but I think it's 145,000 per penny.
Yeah, 147.5 or something.
Was it?
But, yes, yes.
but let me point out, before you consider that, one of the items in the revenue calculations is a fairly large number. That's Hurricane Matthew reimbursement from FEMA. It's a one-time reimbursement.
Now, is that in here?
Yes, it's in disaster recovery, under miscellaneous,
And
which
the
actually,
amount of that?
269,000.
Hold on a second, Bonnie, hold on a second.
I'm sorry, Bob.
So in fact, the,
Rich is looking at the May 1st total general fund, when he's referring to his
Well, I
numbers.
think-
right.
The
this-
expenditures, yeah.
Now,
This,
Yeah.
right?
no, it's a
Well-
different sheet, but in from what he's referring to, which is the total general fund.
Expenditures,
No, it's total general fund, major and minor
right,
non-major
that's
department.
expenditures.
That's expenditures.
Right. That's why, let's go back to the summary. The summary is useful. So the summary that you got this morning with the orange and the yellow highlights, the reason for the yellow highlight was that 72,000,
Yes, it
which
is.
you have now taken out of expenditures. So if you look at in this first section, this is all the general fund. We're recommending that the revenue before transfers is 5,591,500.
Yes.
Okay, and then transfers in are the accommodations tax is gonna deliver
Yep.
391,000. And that leaves general fund revenue at 5,982,600. And the expenditures, the next line it's highlighted in yellow, is actually gonna be $72,000 less than the amount that's in there because.
Right, and that becomes the 5593.
Right. And so the difference between revenue and expenditures is very close to 400,000.
Right.
Okay. So my
So of that,
caution,
We had a one-shot revenue charge for the 240,000.
269.
The
269.
problem is, we're not gonna see that the following year, is what she's saying.
Yeah,
Correct.
It's a
Correct.
one-shot revenue
Right.
charge.
we are gonna get the money, in,
But where's the offset of that charge? We spent $269,000, let's say, in an expense
this year, fiscal 17.
in fiscal 17 as an expense. So
One-shot expense. So
So does that mean the projected total in fiscal year 17 for expenses should be $269,000
More.
less?
More. Remember earlier I said I
More.
left out environmental
the
protection?
offset.
Yeah, so that's where that would happen, and that, okay, so I left it off, the projected fiscal 17
So
by
what you're-
accident.
So when you blow away all the sand, what you're
Mm-hmm.
telling me is we could have a penny tax cut?
No, no. All I'm
You could,
saying,
but that's not,
right,
that
all
would
I'm
be
saying,
our-
you have,
Wait, yeah,
Yeah.
let,
okay, we know that we have, Susan,
I was just gonna say, before we get into the tax rate discussion, since we are streaming live, I wanna make sure that the public knows that we have a lot of outstanding items we haven't even discussed yet.
about, right.
yes,
right.
We
Yeah.
really should be talking about the
Oh, you're
capital
right.
improvement plan.
correct,
Well,
correct.
let's just talk, just talk about the revenue. That's what we're on, is revenue. What, with all of the changes and all the modifications and all that, what's the number of revenue that we're gonna receive?
The revenue is the same as what you have here. The only thing that changed was
The
the
59
expenditures.
The
So,
5982,600 is the total revenue,
correct.
period.
That's what is the projected,
Without the Hurricane Matthew reimbursement, the revenue would be 56?
yes.
See, that's concerning.
Which is why so every year you have this is what am I trying to say? This is a fluid situation. You're projecting, you have a budget that may or may not turn out to be true. And the best you can do, I think, is provide conservative estimates for revenue, even though we know historically we have budgeted less revenue than we've actually received. So in this case, the difference between what was budgeted in fiscal 17 and what is being and what is being recommended for fiscal 18 is about $500,000. And even at that, most of that comes into play. Most of that is in the intergovernmental revenues. The ad valorem taxes, we already know that the budgeted number for fiscal 17 for the ad valorem taxes was quite a bit lower than what we received.
So you understand, the concern is, you look at the fiscal 17 budget, 5664, okay? We had hurricane expenses, brought it up to 5902 for 17. Okay, without that, our expenses would have been 5664,
Budgeted expenses,
budgeted expenses.
right.
We're asking for fiscal 18, 5982, going up that amount of money.
Right.
And yes, maybe we're getting the Hurricane Matthew stuff in there one time, but after that, we're not gonna have that.
Right.
So you're talking about a budget higher than the fiscal 17 projected revenues.
Only slightly higher. It's all told 317.
Right, I've
But
got that
when you
circled here.
remove the Hurricane Matthew, when you take that out of there, it's about equal.
The Hurricane Matthew's in the 317?
Yeah,
No, that's the increase over the fiscal 7. We've already spent it out of the fiscal 17 budget.
this is all revenue. This is all revenue that we're looking at.
We're not talking about expenditures.
Actually, coincidentally, on the sheet that you had that was revised, the difference was 317, which is also, it's a different 317, but on just the revenue for the general fund, the increase over the fiscal 17 budgeted is also 317,000. It's just a coincidence.
But it's,
So it's
a
confusing.
substantial portion of that is generated by the.
Hurricane
ma-
Matthew,
Is
right.
what?
Hurricane Matthew.
Well, my concern is that we're showing more money coming in for 18 because of the reimbursement for Matthew. We're showing expenditures in 17 more because of Hurricane Matthew. Expenditures.
Okay, but we're talking apples and oranges for a second. Are we talking budgeted fiscal 17 or actual fiscal 17? Because Hurricane Matthew was not budgeted in fiscal 17. It did actually happen, so.
I'm looking at actual.
Yes, all right. Let's look at the last line
But
of
my
the
concern is
general
that,
fund
my concern
only.
is that this is like a one-time deal in 18 to get that extra 300,000 in there in funding. But our expenditures in 18, and that doesn't include the Matthew expenditures, we made those in 17. My concern is that we've raised our budget, all of a sudden we're spending $300,000 more money.
Well, okay, let me reframe it. If you recall, when we were doing expenditures, the amount of the increase in the recommended budget versus the fiscal 17 budget was actually a negative. It's basically, the expenditures are no greater than what was budgeted in fiscal 17. 18 and 17 are on a par. We have, the actual difference was about $6,000 less budgeted in 18 versus what was budgeted in 17. So let's look at the revenue. If you look at this sheet, the general fund revenue only, the very last line has, look at across the total general fund, okay? The amount that was budgeted in fiscal 17 was 5.6 million revenue. The amount projected to be received is 5.9, and that difference is a range of things. The amount that is recommended for fiscal 18 is 5.9, and that includes Hurricane Matthew. So if you take Hurricane Matthew out of that, you get closer to the 5.6 that was budgeted in fiscal 17. So essentially, you have both 18 and 17 are recommending the same as, there's very little increase in 18 for revenue and a small decrease for expenditures in 18 over fiscal
I'm looking
17.
at the bottom line.
Okay.
Recommended fiscal year 18, 5982.
Right, and that includes 269 for Hurricane Matthew.
We're gonna get from Matthew.
That includes the 260,000 for Matthew.
I understand
No,
that.
I'm just, and
So
then
if you
have
take
to-
that out,
So then you look at the budget and what they're asking for, which is,
The 5593. In other words, we'll have a surplus of around 140,000 compared, when you compare
actually, it's less than that.
revenues.
But Bonnie, that's not including the non-budgeted items, correct?
correct, right.
So you
And
still
there are a
have,
number of
You're really
ways, so we
saying
have
there's very
roughly,
you're really saying there's very little surplus.
correct, very little.
Yeah.
But there's still 140,000. And when we go to the capital improvement plan, you'll see we have money in reserve that is available for use. The bike walkway money, the future development money, there's future paving fund that has money in it, and these are all things that you can use in addition to the 145,000 to go
yeah.
forward with some capital projects.
I think we should look at the capital projects. I mean, that would be the next logical step.
If we don't want to dissect any of the revenue numbers, it may very well be useful to see what the purpose of this
Bonnie, can I ask
exercise.
A simple question.
Mhm.
Can we look at the budget as the stuff that's been allocated already and not on the budget yet? And with the funds that were available, other than budget coming from taxes and all that, where do we stand? How much money can we take out of those funds without breaking the law and still have money in there for future problems?
Okay, well, so on your capital improvement plan, down at the bottom is the source of funding, the sources.
Bonnie, can I ask a question regarding this sheet that we're
Mhm.
on? And it has to do with the accommodations tax. And I think Rich has already asked this question to you. I'm going to ask it again because I didn't really understand the answer. We are looking at getting revenue of $80,000 less. We're projecting $80,000 less between what we project to get in 17 accommodations tax and what we think we're going to get in 2018. No?
No, what you're seeing is the amount that'll be transferred into the general fund after we spend money in the accommodations tax.
All right, so we're going to transfer $80,000 less the budget that you recommend, that's recommended by staff is going to have the ability to put $80,000 less into the general fund than we did in the 2016-17 budget.
Correct,
Okay.
because we're gonna be spending more in the accommodations
Got
tax
it.
itself.
Yeah.
Got it.
Beach patrol,
Got it.
that kind of thing.
Got it.
That's the net amount, Peter.
Right, right.
Anybody have any other questions about the revenue? Now, we're gonna come back to revenue, aren't we?
Yeah,
Well,
mean, we can.
we've got two sources that we don't know what they are, what they're gonna be yet. Well, we know, we may know what one is, which is the fire district fees.
Oh, yes,
But the return of the local portion of the sales tax, we don't know.
right.
But that's built in here, what it would
No.
be?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
it is not.
Is the fire district
No.
fees
No.
on here? Okay,
No.
then we don't need to
It is
talk about
based
them
on
right now.
current reality,
Okay.
current, what we know today. Which is, we have these things hanging out there, but right now, we don't know which way they're gonna go.
And again.
So they could increase or decrease whatever this final revenue number is.
Correct.
All right, and they're not accounted for in the prior years on this either.
In what way?
That's what my concern is then what my question goes to. If the projected fiscal 17, does that include fire district fees and the local portion of sales tax?
No.
Well, in their current form, yes, but not with changes, because those changes would occur in fiscal 18. These are projected based on what is true today,
And they're only projected for the next 2 months.
just through the end of June. They won't change between now and June, and we'll still get the funding that was set
I'm
up by
trying
the.
to see if we're comparing apples to apples. The number for projected 17 includes,
$951,000 for fire fee. Which is based upon, as Bonnie's saying, the present formula for fire fees.
all right, I understand that, but is a comparable number in the 18 recommended budget?
It's essentially, I believe there's no
Is-
change in the.
All
fire
right,
fee.
but there's a number in there for it.
Put the same number in.
All right,
It's the
there's a
same
number in
number.
there for it.
Yeah,
That's what,
same
I'll
number.
make sure we're comparing apples and apples.
Yeah,
And
mhm.
it's that's the same with regard to the sales tax.
No, the sales tax is, I base it on the School of Government calculations for what, at the time that they did it.
All right, but you're looking at an apple and an apple. You're not
Yes,
loo- Okay,
yeah.
that's what.
Yeah.
One's based on escalation assumed by the Council of Governments.
No,
Correct.
I'm just concerned that that we're comparing the same, I'm not talking about the same value numbers. I'm concerned we got a number for this and a number for this in both
Yes.
of those categories.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we do. But none of
No,
those,
that's not good.
this revenue, neither of those revenue numbers make any assumptions about what will happen with
About
fire
changes,
fees or
right,
what will
right.
happen with
I
the
understand,
local
I
option
understand.
sales tax. Okay.
But they're there. But
They're
there's a
there
number,
as an
there's a
item,
number for
as an
there's a number for
ongoing-
them, yes,
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
All right. Anybody else have questions with regard to the revenue? Do we need to discuss those two issues now?
I don't think so.
I don't recommend it, and here's why. You need to deal with what you know right now. And so anything that we're dealing with will be conservative, in my opinion,
Mhm.
as far as projections. At any point in time, if that legislation passes, we can reconvene and amend as necessary.
Okay, well,
Because if we're suddenly getting much more income in on that thing, then you can reduce.
that's not
the
what my
tax rate.
concern is. That's not
What-
what my
I
concern
don't
is. My
say-
concern is we get in less.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
still, there's gonna probably be an offset.
You're not gonna get less than what's in here. She didn't project the
No.
65%.
And,
Well,
and
there,
the-
there's
No,
potentially
it's-
58,000.
Yeah,
With the
and-
local option sales
Oh,
tax, we could
okay.
potentially
and given,
lose.
and given,
Offset each other. The sales
Correct.
tax
Correct.
offsets the fire fees.
and given, and given 58,000 versus your total fund balance, it's very minimal.
Right,
I-
right.
I don't want to waste everybody's time.
Yeah. And also the nature of, what we have a surplus, either way. What you're gonna decide to go forward with is a big ticket item. Almost anything in this not budgeted column is something that can be delayed until there is clarity on how the fire district fees are gonna go, how the local option sales tax is gonna go.
Bonnie, can we also take that $1.2 million, which is the stuff that's not been budgeted, correct?
Mhm, mhm.
And take it out of the funds, general fund of $7,560,000.
We could.
That we don't get any interest on, but the sidewalks go up X amount of dollars every
Yeah.
year, and the other things go up X amount of dollars every year, and we've been pushing it off for years and years and years, and we talk about that, we have the funds to do it. The fund's not getting any bigger because of interest.
Well, Mark,
Sidewalks go up every year, and
But-
everything else goes
But
up
there
every
Mark,
are
year.
the cons-
other expenditures, and all of a sudden, you're gonna have no.
some of these
No.
things that are unbudgeted are not whether or not we want to do it this year or next year. We need to decide as council is whether we want to do them at all.
At
For
all,
example,
exactly.
the vacuum truck, that's $380,000. We may decide we don't want to do it at all. It isn't a matter of that we're replacing an existing vacuum truck.
Pete, I understand that, so why don't we go over those items?
Well, we are going to.
I want a starting point, though, and I haven't established in my own mind
Okay,
a starting point. Excluding all the stuff, assuming the budget's passed for all the expenses we discussed before lunch,
Mhm.
how much is left over?
if you count hurricane, if you
Well,
count
I-
FEMA's
there's-
reimbursement,
Not in the stuff that you can only use for designated funds.
right.
I'm talking about the general fund, yes.
with or without the FEMA reimbursement.
Well, no, with the FEMA reimbursement's a
With the FEMA
reality.
reimbursement, the difference is,
I guess you could use that FEMA reimbursement for
Three-
capital
How much money is
items,
Yeah,
so that
exactly.
people aren't looking
One-time
at it
capital
as
items.
income coming in.
Yes.
That's what's happening. I mean, what's confusing is that we're taking $300,000, thinking we're getting, that money coming in.
Right.
It's a one-time deal.
right, and that's
So you can take
ideal
that
for capital.
$300,000, since we've already paid for all of that money out
And
of
spend it
fiscal
on something.
17,
Mhm,
and look at the capital improvement
can we
thing,
go
but
back to my
don't look
question?
at it as
Yes.
income.
My question, I want to know, we've just spent X number of dollars, assuming the budget grants everything that we just went over this morning. What's left in the general fund?
Well, what we're gonna get for fiscal 18, the
What's
surplus,
projected? Yeah.
589,000. I'm sorry, 389, sorry, whole
389,000.
new number,
If you add
389,
back in
almost
the
400,000.
72,000.
And that, if I'm correct in my understanding what you just said, that 399,000
89.
is what's available to fund the capital improvement projects that we haven't funded otherwise.
No, that's not exactly
No.
accurate. Because you have a savings account.
Yeah, we have
That's
a,
your general fund reserve.
yes, which is 110% of our operating
Correct.
budget.
So you have, and I'm sorry, I'm butting in here.
No, sorry.
So you have $389,
Thousand.
yeah, that, you know what I mean, between your projected revenues and your budget.
Right.
However, your savings account, your general reserve fund, has an amount of,
A gajillion dollars.
$1,200,000.
it's
It
not a
I'm sorry.
gajillion.
It has
Se-
almost 6 million in it, and this
Yes.
is
Okay.
uncommitted in any
Right.
fashion.
That is
Other
uncommitted,
than-
and that is part of your savings.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, now,
Correct.
my next question,
That
it really
help at
goes to
all?
Rich's question, is set aside the capital stuff. We spend money for out of that reserve, or out of that $389,000. The $6 million, approximately, whatever it is, in the reserve fund, can that be used, or is that available to be used to reduce the tax rate?
Well, certainly it is. But you reduce, your tax rate is based on your operations, your normal operations. And to take money that has accumulated over many, many, many years, it has not been just since the tax increase last year, but over many years, rather than spend money on the town, the money has gone, on infrastructure, the money has gone to the savings account.
Right,
Right.
okay.
And
I
it is
understand.
available to, if you reduce the tax rate and appropriate money from the fund balance to fund operations, it's a very slippery slope at the very
That's
least
that's
that
my
you're gonna
question.
go
So the
down.
bottom,
Yeah.
Right.
the bottom line is you can't really take the FEMA money as income. That's a one-time deal. So if you look at the fiscal 18 budget, it leaves a balance excluding the FEMA thing of around $100,000?
145, I think,
Yeah.
somebody
Okay.
did the math,
So
about
that's the
145.
number, the only number we should really be looking at after we look at the capital improvement plan and see if we want to put monies in there. You talk about all the monies being saved all those years. There was a capital improvement plan that would have used most of that up.
Well, a lot
But
of money.
we just haven't done it. We haven't done a capital improvement plan for a while.
Okay.
And regularly, money went into the future development fund,
Right.
which is, and
Bonnie, you said you were gonna look into that, find that capital fund, if there's anything out in that fund anymore.
I'm sorry, which,
Capital funds?
well, it's on the capital improvement plan sheet.
Okay, I think I understand. Now,
We also need to be clear, there's some big ticket items that are not budgeted and not even shown here as having a value, let alone non-budgeted, such as the roof on the fire station one, such as stormwater management. It's to be determined.
Yeah.
We've got $0 in there. So there's, yes, we have 110% of our operating budget in our general fund right now, which is, could be argued as excessive, but we still,
Have many items that are not budgeted at all.
which is, if I understand is why you don't want to enter that slippery slope.
Correct, because you have a fiduciary responsibility to take care of the needs of the town with town resources. We have the luxury of having built up a really big savings account. We also have some really big needs, like the stormwater management plan, stormwater drainage, the roof, all of these things that we are talking about, sidewalks, all of these things. These issues, these needs don't go away. And so this is why you need to stick with the tax rate taking care of day-to-day operations and your stewardship of town resources paying for further stewardship
Understand,
by
Right.
funding these
Yeah.
large capital items.
understand.
And you could make the argument either way, where we could reduce the tax rate and save take $147,000 out of revenue for a penny. We could also say, and I'll bring up the part that Mark just was talked about, we could talk about spending the amount of money on a street sweeper for $115,000. Let's say it's a wash. If we don't do the street sweeper, we don't get work done. If we buy it next year, it's gonna cost more than it did this year, and we will have had a year without its use. We might have to sub it out to a services contract. So those are the kind of things we have to balance.
All right, I think,
Bob, real quick, we can't forget that we have $5.some million in reserve that we can use.
$6 million.
That number
Yeah.
is on your,
Those type of items.
Okay,
Exactly.
but-
That's what we are here to decide. I agree.
as far as the revenue point of view, relative to the tax rate number, I think that's been pretty well explained here. We've gone through all of that. Okay. Do anybody have any more questions on the revenue? All right, let's move on to the capital.
Other than the caveat that if the fire fees are increased by 65%, that's.
They're
gonna
not,
bring in-
it won't be anywhere near that. We're sure of that.
Oh, you are sure? of
Yes.
that? You won't get that increase?
No, the county's already acted.
All right,
And
didn't know that.
we're just waiting for the dust to settle on it, but there was a
And-
number around 25%. But w-
Okay,
and
and
the
what is
chief is
that,
gonna-
what would
the
that
chief is-
mean?
The chief is gonna address that.
Capital.
All right, so I have a concern about almost $1 million on, I really do question the Public Works building, land acquisition and building. I know you said you've needed it. Our town hasn't grown, our population hasn't grown. You got rid of all that material at the Fire Station 1, right? And by the way, I wish we had kind of gotten a report on that, on where it went and what we got for it, if anything. But all that material from the faulty stuff we got is gone, is that correct?
Yes.
So doesn't that leave some ground and land for some of the piles of mulch and, yes, ma'am?
I'm just gonna refocus. We're looking at fiscal 18. That's beyond,
I understand that.
can we,
Yeah, that's in 19
yeah, let's
and 20.
work on the
18?
second column, yes, not budgeted FY 18. Please.
Well, I think, starting at the top of the column, I think we all recognize the fact that something has to be done with the roof on Fire Station 1, and that the first step is an engineering report, and we've got $50,000 as a marker for that, placeholder for that.
So everything I've heard is that should go into the budget as a funded item.
That was mentioned, yes,
We-
earlier. Mhm.
Well, it's gotta go, we have to vote on it.
That's what we're deciding now. We're discussing that now.
And Bob, Mayor, should we go one item at a time and say yes to it, or you wanna go through all?
I wouldn't,
I think we should, we all agree $50,000, we need to do the study for the roof. We should agree on that and go to the next.
well, my
item
concern
on
is,
that.
I don't know that we need to discuss stuff we agree on. I was gonna take the same approach I did with the other ones, of what you don't agree with.
One or the other, but let's just,
And then we're talking about the non-budgeted items line, column.
So the next one under that with meat on the bone is sidewalks at $500,000 on the island.
and for that, we have a $100,000 grant, so the
Right.
net is 400,000.
Does everybody agree that that should be included?
yes.
Okay. The,
Hold it,
wait.
hold it.
wait,
Mayor, if I could,
Until I get that engineering study and everything else, I don't know. I would agree with that, or not. I think the placeholder is there, but until we get the results back from the engineering study, I don't know what it's gonna show.
For
So
the-
I'm
Don't
just
we
being
still
very-
need to get the results
I'm
back
being
before we
quite
actually have a
conservative.
discussion and approve whether we spend the money or not?
Well, no, no,
Yes,
talking about
and
it
So
that-
if
spending
it
it.
comes back negative, we can always say no to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the
but-
point
but
being
for
that the
right now-
500,000 goes into the budget, it's as a placeholder. And then when we get
Yeah.
the cost and the proposals, we go through the RFPs and all that kind of stuff, we actually get a dollar amount
Right.
that we will vote on and decide.
But
So,
that's the kind of money that I would put in as coming out of the
General
general
fund,
fund, and not
yes, not adding to
what
tax.
we're, not part of our fiscal 18 budget.
Well,
That's the
it
kind
can't
of-
be, because otherwise it's gonna be a
capital,
hell of
I
a
know.
tax increase.
But that's
So it's-
a major ticket item that is part of the capital
Yes.
improvement plan and out of that money that we've saved.
I just want to make a point. When you say general fund, if you're talking about the savings account,
Savings account.
please use reserve or savings
Yeah, I
account.
Okay,
would-
Reserve
Right.
account,
Yes, okay.
So,
I'll write that
especially
down.
for those who are watching.
all right, reserve account. Stormwater.
Well, no, hold on, let's
Um,
not, let's move on. We got an issue with that $500,000. That should not be budgeted, it should come out of the reserve.
This is the Main Street sidewalk.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
It will be budgeted as an earmark under general reserve fund. It will not be expended till it comes back before this board on a recommendation.
Right.
So it will in
And-
fact become one of these listed items on the sheet that Bonnie gave us today for the
Yes.
various funds we have, such as Town Park Fund, Bike Walkway Fund,
Yes.
Future Street Fund.
Yes.
Yes.
And this might be a good time to point out, the balances in several of those funds are not earmarked for any other project. For instance, the Future Development Fund has $210,000 in it and with no foreseeable use.
That would be the-
Yeah, those are
Perfect start.
unrestricted funds.
Correct.
All right, the next item is stormwater drainage of 113.
That is over a 10-year period,
Well-
so that's why it continues.
Well, we're saying 100, give some background on this, Susan.
I will. The stormwater management plan, which will be presented to you, we have a preliminary draft. We requested a 5- and 10-year capital plan. This amount here is the actual project that was identified as the highest priority in that year. So for every year up to 10 years, it will have a different amount for the project that is that priority for that year.
What are they coming up with the total amount?
Where are they coming up?
What is the total amount for stormwater?
I wasn't prepared to answer that today, but you will be presented that.
What she can answer to is that it's projected by staff that would be spending about $565,000 on it between now and fiscal year 2022.
In the first 5 years.
No, 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 no. Are you looking
Wait.
at that number there?
Yes.
No, it's
Which
it's
number?
these numbers plus that 564. That's
Oh, that's out
564.8
years.
is
Thank
in
you,
the out
thank you,
years.
thank you.
Right,
That's out
yeah.
years, but it's,
So it looks like,
Over $1 million.
What, about $1.1 million or something?
I would say 1, 2, but I didn't want to.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That,
Yeah.
those numbers just happen to be
But-
close, that's why I
The
confused
reason
it.
I'm
yeah.
asking is, at
Mhm.
one point, we were told it could be $3 million.
Well, I don't think it was, staff never said that. I think there was a
I
general
think that was just
assumption.
a hypothetical number that people
We,
got
nobody knew.
anxious about.
I heard people
It
say
wa-
it could be $4 or $5 million.
It
but
was
Yeah.
very,
But
no,
they didn't know, they didn't
and
have any
we,
basis
and we
for
always
that
said,
number.
we won't know until the analysis is done.
But we're
I'm
looking at
actually
spending
quite
100,
relieved.
we're looking at talking right now about spending potentially up to $113,000 next year on that.
On the actual project.
project.
That first project.
Looking at
Which
these
require
amounts through
the
fiscal
equipment.
'22,
Well, we're not there yet.
no, I'm just saying,
Mhm.
here we are, looking at those amounts, although I think rather than financing that kind of a thing, it seems to me that those are amounts more reasonably funded through our normal tax year and maybe some deletions from the reserve fund.
We
That is the right
are
one?
not, yes, we are not recommending any financing for stormwater projects. Now, I'm not talking about, and nor are we recommending any financing for annual maintenance. we are recommending that this be earmarked within the general fund reserve. That way we save, there are savings in interest and.
For a 10-year, initially for a 10-year period. Is that?
Well, right now, in order for us to get to the point where our stormwater system is working as it should be regarding water quality, it'll take, we have a 10-year project list. As you know, with anything, those are the pipes that are the highest priorities at this point in time.
Right.
10 years from now, you're gonna have a new set of pipes that have either corroded or gone beyond
Oh,
their
it's
useful life.
ongoing.
Yeah, it is.
It's ongoing.
It's a continuous project, maintenance and replacement and repair.
Right.
It's
And-
continuous.
And the engineering study we've financed already in fiscal year 16-17 was to establish an overall plan so that we can
Maintenance,
properly
capital, yeah.
segment it into various years, because you don't want to do something here that then you're going to have to undo later on.
Yeah.
But
So
that's,
it's,
but that's what this does.
And that's what this is. It
Mhm.
also includes, and this is estimates, you never know until you put it out to bid. This also includes engineering costs of these projects, because there will be engineering costs
so
and
what are we
permitting
here,
costs.
what are we deciding here today? With the establishment of a stormwater management fund?
No, we don't need to.
We don't need to.
All right, I'll rephrase that. What are we deciding here? To budget $113,100 for fiscal year 18
Yes,
for stormwater
For the
management?
first project,
yes,
Okay.
or the
For the
first
first-
priority projects.
yes.
And that's
Mhm.
coming
And
out of the
that may or may
reserve.
not come out of our revenues. It probably is gonna be some
It'll-
combination of revenues and the reserve fund.
Correct.
Yeah.
As we're
Okay.
saying.
Then the next item is vacuum truck.
This is required, you may recall that during the stormwater analysis, is that we had to flush the pipes, and there were several pipes we could not flush. In the past, when pipes were clogged or were allowed to, or they abandoned them, there's been a lack of maintenance over the last 30 years, I'll just put it that way. That they would flush them, but they were flushing them into the waterways, into the retention ponds. All the debris from the streets, garbage, they were flushing the pipes into our waterways.
So what you want to do is you want to get a machine called a press vac, and you want to suck the material in and
Yes.
just properly dispose of it, and then go back
Yes.
and suck more out. What they had been doing is dumping it behind the fire station
Yes,
over this past year.
yes. And that was just what we could do. That wasn't the whole system. Those are, again, the higher, what we identified as problem areas.
It would seem like, to me, that this is a needed expenditure.
It's-
However, $380,000 for a vacuum truck. However,
Mhm.
the usage of it would certainly not be like we use the fire engine every day and
It-
on every call.
No, it's not. Well, I'll tell you what, with every rain event we have, we should be flushing. We should be,
No, we should be
cleaning,
vacuuming.
vacuuming,
Mhm.
and vacuuming our storm drains, our catch basins.
Well,
These
under
are things,
regular routine maintenance basis?
or after every major rain event.
Okay. And this would be operated by our Department of Public Works?
It would probably be operated between the Public Works and the stormwater manager. And because his label is field technician too.
So he needs a CDL to become the engineer of our stormwater management plan?
He's not an engineer. I can't afford an engineer. He's a manager field technician at this point in time. We approached Ocean Isle Beach, who bought their vacuum truck last year, and asked if we could have a shared use with them. They denied it. They didn't want
I
to
see.
risk the liability and the fact that they use it as much as they do. They didn't
Okay.
feel they could share it with us.
That's a pretty good testimonial.
It also shows with leaf and limb, if we take those employees off there's something they could do this full-time when it rains.
All right, this,
Doesn't the camera system go hand in glove with this too?
Yes, it's a televised, as you know, televised system. It's the, instead of digging up the pipe,
Mhm.
you send the system in to record see what the failure is, what the blockage is. It's really, I think it's
Yes.
critical because we're going to download those photos and videos into our
Didn't we
GIS
spend
system too.
$20,000 just in our recent engineering study
Yes,
on camera work?
and we didn't even do, probably didn't even do 20% of our system.
So us buying a camera is probably a good investment
I
rather
think
than
it is.
renting one.
I think it is.
Do our people have the expertise to operate that camera?
They will.
the stormwater management person will,
Yes,
that's also driving the truck?
yes.
All right, as part of this also is the street sweeper.
The street sweeper, I know it doesn't sound like it's a critical need, but it is, and let me explain why. Under our, especially at the park, under our stormwater major permit, we are required to maintain those pathways and that parking lot free of debris between the cracks so the water can infiltrate on site. We have been unable to do that. We actually, well, not, we have our permit right now because we're not doing that work.
So the walkways will be able to clean?
No, it's not for walkways, but if you do the sidewalk, if you construct the pervious sidewalk, there will be a requirement to maintain it using this type of work.
You're talking about the new sidewalk on Main Street?
Yes, if you plan to construct that, that will be a requirement of the permit for that.
But you're not talking about buying those things outright, you're talking about financing them?
I don't think.
Because I'm looking at
No.
Carol,
debt
n-
financing,
That's,
stormwater drainage.
Carol,
No.
that's my fault. I just plugged them in there. I didn't know how they, when
So
I.
that 113 comes out?
Right, well, the debt financing is actually what comes out. Let's just say unknown. Down at the bottom, where it says debt financing, it was just another, to give you another option.
So the
Um,
575
Oh, you
and
put all of them
113
down there,
comes
too.
out?
All of that, they
Okay.
could be funded
So
in,
what are we taking out of?
well, it's
Fund
just,
balance.
it's all of that, that exists to show you how possibly these items could be funded. And if you noticed, taking the money out of the fund balance is not one of the options, but this is probably, I mean, I think this is Susan's recommendation that the money, like you said, be a combination of appropriation from the fund balance.
What I'm coming out of is 550,000 in fiscal 18 would be coming out of the reserve fund, whether it's a particular designated fund or the general fund. You've got 550,000 coming out of that. Is that correct?
Yes, but it, again, it would be a combination of,
Well, it's,
right.
if you look at the reserve fund,
Mhm.
whatever that number is, and it's comprised of some of these things like future street paving and
Right.
everything else. So it's just
Those
gonna be
are-
reduced by
right.
$550,000.
At minimum.
So
Yes.
on this capital improvement draft, we can take the last two lines under debt financing, take that out completely?
Just change debt financing to be determined,
Yeah.
TBD.
It's a possible payment method.
The
Correct.
stormwater damage and the
Right.
stormwater damage equipment remains. It's
Right,
just
but
a-
the drainage.
just
They
another
need to.
category
The
of
numbers got it,
Right.
the
We
debt
numbers,
financing.
the numbers have to
that
stay
goes away.
The numbers
Right.
have to stay there.
Yeah, and there
The numbers.
are, just like a lot of street sweepers, there are lease programs like for the vac truck, but we didn't look into that yet because we didn't know if that was gonna be a funded item. So that's something we can look at. We'll look at alternatives to funding to find the best and most, least costly method of doing it.
All right, well, then you're talking about, if everything is in there, you're talking about reducing the reserve fund by $1.2 million.
Well, we have several reserve funds. We have the future development, the
But they're all
street.
part of that reserve fund.
No, then we have the big reserve fund of 5.8 million. So we have these smaller ones of
Right.
550,000.
But it's all what the town has.
Correct.
So if you look at the whole big pot, you're talking about reducing what we currently have, which is, I don't know, $7 million? I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah,
Seven.
or the seven, or
By
6.5.
$1.2 million plus.
Yes.
So I'm pointing this out because it's easy to see, I think, how quickly that amount can be decimated, and we've got to be very careful.
Well, that's
about
why we
that.
need to decide,
So, Rich,
are
this
these
is
appropriate
where-
things or
And
not?
I came into this meeting wanting to cut the tax rate.
Well, we haven't even got to that point.
No, I'm just saying, but if you look at how quickly that can get depleted, and that we only have 100,000 extra this year without, coming in to pay for that $1.2 million, whatever. You
That's why, Carol, I worry about the future.
How would you handle this?
Cost, well, it's gonna have to be studied, because when you look at the summary of the major expense items, the less we spend, the more money we put in savings. It's that simple. But when you look at some of the major cost items, and I'm not here to hurt morale, but if you look at the major increase in health insurance, the major increase in the 401K supplement. You're looking at major increases in entitlements that during this low inflationary period, we've been fortunate.
Sorry.
I don't know what that was.
It's
Peter,
microphone.
Peter dropped his teeth.
Don't worry.
They're coming out.
That was really good. I like
You know,
that.
so, that's what I worry about. I look at contract services, we went from 244,000 to 321,000.
Which
We-
includes the
We
bigger items,
need
the
to,
one-time items.
you know, I mean, there's reasons for everything. You know, that's why we need to look at long-term so that we don't get into the same trouble that we did before. We have to learn from our history. The reserve funds are for reserve funds.
What trouble are you talking about?
We
We
kn-
didn't get into trouble. I mean, what trouble are you talking about? You said, so we don't get into the same trouble we did before.
To have a large spike in our tax increase.
Okay, I didn't, I'm
That's-
sorry, I
that's-
really didn't know what
no,
you were
no.
referring to.
That's what I'm worried about. And so we have to be just a couple of steps ahead of the game so that we can look at this thing globally. Maybe we need to ask the employees what they want for benefits, what their priorities are. I don't know.
We've asked it through staff. We've asked it through staff to come back with recommendations on salaries.
No, I'm talking about benefits. I mean, we're paying for spousal benefits.
Until we do a
Well, I
compensation and
understand,
benefits
Peter.
study, we don't have a place to move to or from.
I understand that, but that's the only point that I'm making.
Rich, we do not pay for spousal insurance.
No?
No, they pay for that.
I thought we grandfathered
They
some of it in.
contribute.
Yeah, well, it's just a long-term concern that I have.
I thought we do. I thought some of it's grandfathered. We made some changes.
In my opinion.
All right, can we
Huh?
focus back, can we focus back on the,
Well,
Yeah.
I'm just
can we
asking,
focus
is there
back
a
on the
left-hand
capital budget? On
There
the,
still
on the
should be
capital
some
improvement
still
plan, I
on
should say.
Yeah, long-term.
All right, we're focusing back on the capital improvement plan. We've gone through each and every item on there. We don't know exactly how each one is gonna be funded. By that I mean exactly what fund it's gonna, the dollars are gonna come from.
But Mayor,
But it's clear there's dollars there to be able to pay for
Yeah.
that. So, the question is, I think, do we approve this capital improvement plan? Are we gonna include these items that are on there in the draft?
You know, a capital improvement plan is a very flexible document, and I'm not gonna, I don't wanna approve something now looking out 5 years. We really don't know what's gonna happen and where we're gonna be, unless we're establishing a specific fund for a specific item. You're okay leaving it on a piece of paper. It's not something that would be approved now going out 5 years.
Isn't the question whether we're gonna approve this year's slice?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't
And
think-
would
then we
look at
have a
fiscal
paper plan
18.
that goes out into the future.
Exactly.
This is the plan that
Yeah.
goes out, but the
Yeah.
only thing that you're committing to is this year.
Right,
Correct,
Right.
right.
And there are a number of things that need to happen in order for the other years to
But
happen.
what all of this is leading me to, and that's what I'm gonna try and convince you of, Rich, is that although we have a small reserve in fiscal 18, because I'm taking
Surplus.
away
Oh,
that
it's
FEMA
noise.
reimbursement,
It's noise, there's no question.
there's not much.
It's noise.
And I can't justify.
No, I
tax
understand that.
decrease as much as I want one.
But
How can we even talk about tax
No,
decreases
hang
until we
on, John,
finish up what
John,
our
John,
dollar amounts are
John,
gonna be?
John,
that's,
John,
that's
hang on,
not,
that's not.
that's not what she's
Do
saying.
you agree with
Yeah.
that analysis?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he does, he does.
Yeah.
I
Done.
think everybody's,
Thank you very much.
I don't think anybody.
Okay, we're all on the same page then.
Great, great, thank you.
I want a tax decrease.
So I'll ask you.
Bonnie, you have what, 100, take out the FEMA, it's $145,000, roughly in there? That's
Right.
a 1 cent.
That's one
decrease.
penny.
Right.
We'll get the money from FEMA, maybe we may not get the full amount, but there's still gonna be a surplus down the road with
To
FEMA.
pay for some of these non-funded
No,
items.
no, I want that non-funded item to come
I
out of
mean,
the
you want a
general
penny
fund.
tax cut, we can do it.
Let's do a penny tax cut and then take the money
I'm
that
not
we're gonna
opposed
spend
to
for
it.
sidewalks and engineering studies out of the general fund of $7 million. It sits there, guys, we get no interest. There's projects that we wanna do right now, increase every year. A sidewalk was talked about 10 years ago with you, Carol, and it's still being talked about. You don't have to increase it, went up from 10 years ago to now, probably 50% on concrete.
All right, Mark,
I
hold
am
hold-
not
hold on a second.
Disputing that.
Hold on a second. We're talking about a tax rate.
Oh,
We haven't yet approved this capital improvement plan. Okay?
I'm sorry, I need to make a statement here on that. Mark, I don't dispute wanting to pay for these things now out of the general fund. But you don't know in the next year, 2, 3, you're gonna have other items popping up, and that we will have depleted that general fund, our expenses go up, and you're cutting the tax rate. I think we,
7.2 million to
I
6
think we have to
million.
prudently, we're already beyond that in a sense. We've got $1.2 million on here for this year. $1.2 million coming out of that
We have to
seven.
be responsible next year, so
You've
we spent a
gotta-
lot last year, this next year, we're gonna be more prudent, but we
Next
haven't.
year, your salaries are higher, everything else, everything keeps going
Carol,
up.
we keep putting things off that need to be done.
I am convinced that if we cut the tax rate now by 1%, in a year or two, you're gonna have to raise it right back up again.
Well, we have 5 bodies here that.
Can
will
I,
vote, so
can I move on? We'll get to this discussion here in a second, to approve the capital improvement plan.
With
I
the-
don't wanna approve the capital, let's look at fiscal 18, are we talking about that?
This, this document, what we're being asked to do is to approve these capital expenditures for these possible capital expenditures for 2018 without designating exactly where the money's gonna come from, but understanding that there's money there to do it.
and these are possible expenses.
And then,
Including a
and
vacuum
then-
truck, camera system, and
yeah,
suite.
and then,
Yeah.
and let me finish, please. And then the plan is the future years that are on this document. We're not committing that money, but that's the plan that is subject to change
Well, no,
and
because I wanna
modification.
talk about public works building and land acquisition and some of these other
That's,
things.
well, that's why I wanna get it
That's
resolved.
2019.
$500,000 for technology improvements?
Where are you?
I'm just looking at some of the items in
No,
the
no,
out
no, no, no.
years.
That's the financial software. That's the 60,000.
I'm sorry,
for
that's the building,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
right,
the
that's
building,
right.
yeah.
It's,
Blue.
when I have a piece of
Right.
paper going
But
across, it
Mayor?
makes it easier for me to read.
Shouldn't we just worry about 2018 right now and vote on those things?
The-
Because the rest is
well,
just a plan.
And it's designed to change every single year.
Yep.
So that next year, during the budget talks next year, the fiscal 19 we'll have specifics on
Well,
fiscal 19.
No,
and-
I think, the reason I'm concentrating on a plan is, I think that there ought to be a design and a considered design as to what's intended. So that we're not, because people have raised the question, why don't you have a capital improvement plan? Why don't you know what you're gonna do in the future, or at least plan what you're gonna do in the future? This does that. The only thing you're committing to is for 18.
Right.
That's why I say it's important that we have a capital improvement plan. This is a design, may change
Yeah.
for one reason or another, but this is where we intend to go.
Well, I'm okay
this
with all
point
of
in
it,
time, yes.
except for the land acquisition and building for public works. The rest of this stuff is like built-in obsolescence,
Well,
stormwater.
but Carol, it's a fact that we've outgrown our Department of Public Works facility.
Yeah,
It
I
isn't so
understand the
much-
concept
It's
of
next year.
outgrowing
We're
it.
not putting $400,000 aside to buy land and $500,000
I don't
aside.
care, I don't want that, I'm not voting for that in here right now at all, and certainly not without more study. I am not putting something down in the capital improvement plan that I don't know, that has not been studied. That's $1 million in there. I will not vote
What,
for that.
nothing's been studied, Carol. What it is
just
the
the- it's the
realization
future.
that we, at some time in the future, need a Department of Public Works facility, different than the one we have right now. And that we're just forward-thinking, saying, as a placeholder, as a concept, that future councils can look at this and say, in the past, they had a capital improvement plan that had an allocation.
I'm not at the stage willing to commit to that, I don't have enough information right now to say, oh, yes, we need to spend.
Well, are the amounts too high? Are they not high enough? Are they?
I need to look at the needs, I need to look at, I don't have enough information now to commit to $1 million. I
We're
don't.
not committing to
you're
$1
not-
million.
It's,
on a capital improvement plan. I don't have enough information.
Susan?
the plan is a planning tool, CIP is a planning tool. The only, commitment is fiscal 18. It shows you what we have identified as future needs. Whether they remain there or what price they are, we don't know, we wouldn't know.
Look,
But it's up
You're
to,
saying you've
let me,
identified as a future need. I'm not convinced it's a future need. Until I'm convinced it's a future need, I don't want it to go down on the capital, I don't want it included in the capital
all right,
improvement
let me,
plan.
okay.
Next year, somebody's gonna say, look, look, yeah, it's on here, we really need to do that, without having ever really looked into this.
One, that would never happen. They would never happen in that fiscal year where we didn't do the work that we needed to do to present it for approval and, as, it's,
It can happen until we, it cannot happen
It
until
ca-
we approve it.
it can't, it just can't happen. All we're asking for is the commitment to the 18th and
I'm
just
not there.
acknowledgement of the rest of the
I'm not there to make
years.
that commitment yet.
For fiscal year 18?
We have been given no detailed information at all on the building grounds and needs, none.
What
That's
year
not
is
$18.
what?
We've
It's
got
not,
$1 million on this piece of paper.
you have one,
Yeah, we've heard waves, you know, yeah, you run out of space and you need some more space, but for me, that's not sufficient to even think about adding $1 million onto this thing.
It's a list.
List or not,
No,
I
We-
want more information before
I
I
don't think,
say,
I
oh,
don't,
yeah, we
if I
need to
can,
keep it.
if I can move this along, I don't think, I'm gonna ask for a I'm gonna ask for a vote, because I don't think that anybody's gonna change Carol's mind with what they say. I mean, she's, has her opinion, and that's, in her position, and that's what it is. Because everybody, just about everybody has spoken, and I think we're just, going over ground we already plowed. So I'd like to move it along and
Just know
just
that
ask for a vote.
these things get legs on them that you may not
Yeah.
realize.
Yeah, you know, seeds grow, Bob.
I know, I'm not, you know, I'm not taking a position one way or other whether Carol's right or she's wrong. There's no question that they do. Things can take on a life of their own. But, we can sit here and I don't think we're gonna change any minds, which is why I wanted to cut off the debate.
But Bob, real quick, if, you know, if people didn't dream, we wouldn't have a park. You know, didn't say we're gonna have a park. You know, you meet with stormwater 10 years ago, no one spoke of it. But now it's a reality and we have to deal with it. Why not put it on the books just to look at it? Nothing's approved, nothing will go forward unless this council agrees on that.
Well, with the understanding that the capital improvement plan only commits for 2018, it's a planning tool for the beyond. That's what I'm asking to be approved or to be acted on. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Did you ask for against?
Not yet, Rich hasn't said yet.
No, I support Carol. I don't think the.
Okay,
public
then
works-
against, we
Nay.
have two nays.
Let me ask another question too. There could be other things that need to be added to this capital improvement plan, and we as council, and just because staff hasn't brought them to us, there could be things that we feel are important to be added on here, just like all the other items for futuristic consideration.
And the land use thing maybe get bumped off.
Well,
because it's
there's no question.
It's not necessary.
There's no question in my mind there's gonna be stuff added to it in
Yeah,
future years.
This is a starting point.
Susan?
I would say the Main Street sidewalk project is a prime example of what you just very stated. We, as staff, have been around for the discussions, but it wasn't until council gave us directive to do the engineering, and by doing that, gave me direction to apply for the grant. Again, that's a perfect example of what you just stated, Peter.
All right, we took a vote, and
Yeah,
it was
well.
3-2 to adopt the capital improvement plan with the caveats that I said.
You know, I
Well-
hate
well,
to
I
tell you
shouldn't
this,
say it.
guys.
I shouldn't, wait, maybe I mischaracterized that. I think that as part of the budget, we have to adopt the capital improvement plan. All we did was to say that that's what we want
What do we call
prepared
this?
when we're gonna
Potential
vote.
projects or something.
when
Well,
we're
that's what
gonna
they
vote.
are.
Because we're
That's all
not
they are.
voting on that today. We're not voting on a budget today.
Well,
But
what's the word you
I have seen over the years a capital improvement project with all kinds of things on there that somehow suddenly become like givens that have to get financed, and expenditures have been made that shouldn't have been made. I'm just warning
Yeah,
you.
but each council
You
has
guys-
the opportunity to
I
evaluate those
understand
projects
that.
as they go forward or not.
So call it a conceptual
But
capital
even for
improvement
fiscal
plan.
18, you know,
And
$1,200,000, that
CIP.
troubles me.
Yeah. It-
Sorry.
Carol, I concur. The only thing that I worry about is that we're not thinking ahead in some sense, because if we continue to outsource leaf and limb, which is only gonna require less room at Public Works. So it's just, like I said, seeds have a tendency to grow in this town.
That's not a true characterization,
Well-
Rich.
I'm not sure if it's true or not. I'm just making an
Well, then,
opinion.
as a councilman, don't make that as a public comment.
Why not? It's a free country.
We have, what we've done is only committed Bonnie to prepare this
Right,
document
right.
as part of the budget action. We still have to take formal public action on it at the budget hearing.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to think that we've now have spent $380,000 on a vacuum truck, because we haven't.
Right.
What we've done is we've said that that is a potential expenditure, and we want staff to move forward with coming up with a proposal
Bonnie,
to us
there's-
for that.
Excuse me, Pete, but possible there's grants for those items, correct?
The funding is not, correct, I mean, they
So
can
we
be
could
funded a
get grants for some of
variety
these items, so
ways.
it'd be even less.
Correct.
Susan,
Putting
did
the
you have
cart
something
before
you
the
wanted
horse,
to say?
guys, I think you
You're
gotta
talking
look
about
to the
fiscal
future.
18 budget, and you've just added basically those items into the fiscal 18 budget
But they're
that
gonna
have to get
ask,
paid for.
but they're gonna ask for grants on those items.
Yeah,
Right.
but-
It's like the living shoreline,
but-
the maximum amount is 95, but it could be less. So what it's a placeholder in and anything you budget now, when circumstances change, you can unbudget or you can change. You can
Susan,
amend.
Susan.
I don't want to change the topic, but actually I do. We have the two fire chiefs here, and I didn't know if you wanted them to come up, because as you know, every year we talk about personnel, and Chief Dempsey gave you some information regarding the different rules. So I'm going to, with your permission, Mayor, may I bring them forward?
Kevin, this would be a long time to ask for 6 firemen.
Yes, it would be.
There's never a good time until your house is on fire.
Oh, come on. That's not fair, Pete.
That was comical, I'll take that back. Carol, you're right.
Chief?
I took it that way.
Well, as the mayor stated, I was at the county commissioners meeting yesterday morning, and 3 of the 5 voted to do a 25% increase all the way across the board. Countywide. No, though that was not what was requested by several of the municipalities and fire departments throughout the county.
With a 25% increase,
We
what
go
does that
to-
give you in addition to what you're currently getting? How much money will that bring in?
1.2 million.
So if you're bringing
That
in
gives us
1.2 million.
That gives us $241,000 more than we would have gotten without the 25% increase.
There's a 2 penny
Huh?
decrease.
That gives us $241,000 more
What
than
is
we
that?
would have.
Without that increase, we got, I'm using round numbers, we got approximately
Well, that's what I was asking
$942,000.
for the difference. I'm
Well, that's
sorry,
what
I
Peter
thought he was
just
just
gave.
telling
He
me
just
we're
said
getting an extra
No.
million.
Oh,
too.
no,
No.
no,
What
no.
extra, how much extra? will we get?
$241,000.
241,000.
240.
Yeah, 241.
Now, we're not getting that. Hold on a second. We're not getting that. The state legislature has not yet acted on
They
the
have not
legislation.
approved it. It was in local government committee as of yesterday, and they did meet yesterday. But the state doesn't update quick enough, so nobody knows what happened yesterday.
And
Yeah.
Carol, because it's specifically, you want to know how much we're going to get during our 17-18 fiscal year to offset the budget expenditures that we're talking about spending for the whole town. The most we'll ever get out of that $240,000 increase, because of the 25%, is half of that.
Why?
Because that would start in January of 2018. and we wouldn't get it until the last half
Right,
of
but
this
that is a
budget year.
tax increase to our citizens,
Yes,
and the
and
only fair
inside and
way to
outside the
handle
fire
that
district.
would be to reduce the property tax rate by.
That
the
was,
equivalent
that
of-
was the intention of the fire board,
Okay.
and,
To make
the
it.
county does not agree. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I mean, we'd like to make this as far as we can, because the rates are based on square footage, and this is from the taxes, so there may not be a pure revenue neutral. But what you're telling me and what I'm hearing is the 240 becomes 120 because of the lag and
Yeah,
the
the
reporting?
most that we would get
Only for next year.
during this tax year of 17-18
year.
is,
This coming
is,
tax
is
year.
$120,000.
I don't understand that, Peter. If the bill goes out in July,
June 25th, I think, is
But it-
when it could possibly be approved.
But-
well,
get it
but,
from
but.
the
It would
but-
not be ratified
But it
till
goes
July,
out, but
right?
goes out, the county bills, and it's on the county real estate tax bill, goes out.
They're
in
due in
July.
September.
Mhm.
All right. How is that any different than the real property tax?
Yeah.
Well, because they work on a calendar year and we work on a fiscal year.
We're July to July.
No, let's ask Bonnie. Bonnie, you receive money from the county on the real property taxes, right? How often do you receive that?
Every quarter.
You receive the fire district fees every quarter.
I'm sorry, we get a check from Brunswick County, we get funds from Brunswick County monthly for property taxes and quarterly for fire fees.
Okay.
All right.
If the tax is effective in July, when the tax bill goes out, it's the same principle as the real property tax is effective in July when the real property tax bills go out.
That's when they're
Right.
billed, yes.
All right, so they're on a fiscal year as well.
Yes,
Same fiscal year
Yeah.
as ours.
That's why I don't understand that we may not actually physically receive the money until January because it hasn't been paid to the county, but it's due in the
Right.
first half in the last half of 17.
Bonnie, when I get my tax bill
I don't know. I
in
don't know.
September or August when they come out, it's gonna have an increase in my fire fee.
Correct.
It's gonna go up 25%.
Well, assuming, yeah,
It's
all
certainly
all the
right.
time.
No, no,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And then I get my bill and I pay it. I don't know when the town gets it or not, but I paid that 25%. And I think on that tax bill, then it should reflect the revenue neutral of 240 and not 120. And I'm as confused.
Well, it's not revenue
There-
neutral.
There are a number of
Well,
things
yeah, but
that
no,
are-
what Rich is saying is, he understands it's not revenue neutral, but he said if the tax rate was reduced by the comparable $240,000, that's what he's saying.
Right.
This
Well,
is,
some of that money comes, for the fire fees, comes from outside our corporate limits, and some comes from inside our corporate limits. In fact, a third, roughly, of the fire fees that we get come from outside of our corporate limits.
We know
So
that.
lowering or raising the tax rate only affects 2/3 of that pool within the fire district, and we just need to understand that. The whole amount of money here that we would gain.
But
if
we're
we-
already, our taxpayers are basically paying a lot more for fire service. than
they're
the people
subsidizing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe they'd be paying a little bit more in, but it doesn't change
Right.
the revenue neutral thing for our people who are paying property taxes.
Exactly.
right.
That's the point.
And there may be even a greater lag than just 2 quarters. All of our dealings with Brunswick County Tax Office are, I want to say a year behind, but Lisa could, yeah, so it may very well be, and I don't know the answer to this question, but I suspect, based on the situation with the property taxes, how we report them and what they consider the money that we're paying now to be for tax year 2016. So there's a significant lag, and I think it's possible that they wait until all of the money is collected for that year until they start
Right,
dispersing it.
If we could talk about the elephant in the room, the 240,000, if it's $240,000, if that's a reality. The concept is that that's not available for real property tax relief for
Until
our
next
fiscal
July.
17-18.
Correct. I don't know definitively.
And yet, people are gonna get
18,
this
19.
bill,
18, 19.
Right.
and they're gonna have their
Right.
normal property tax plus an increase in the fire fee, so we better be darn careful in how we handle this.
Well, I've got my tax bill right here, and it's set for last year, and it says that it's due on it's delinquent as of,
January 1st,
Right.
January 5th.
yeah.
So I would look at this and say that this money is then going to be used starting January 5th for all of 2018.
Look at the date that it says, that's only a delinquency date. It
Yeah,
says when it's due.
The bill
It's due
date
in
is July
September.
18th of 2016. The due date is September 1st of 2016, and the delinquent date is January 5th of 2017.
Right, so they're really due in September, even though practically, I mean, I don't pay
Right.
mine till December. So they're on a fiscal tax year the same as we. The problem is, what Bonnie identified is that they may be, in dispersal, they may be a year behind.
Right.
That's,
Well, and not, and
horrible.
simply because there are so many pieces to that, to the puzzle. I haven't ever understood it. Regularly, every February, Lisa files a TR2 form, which basically reconciles our ad valorem and personal property tax collections with the billing. And it is, what got filed in February this year was for the tax year beginning January 1st, 2016. So we don't have, so they have the entire year, the calendar year, in which halfway through the bill goes out in July, due in September. I mean, they're billing us for something that actually started 6 months prior, because it's the property value at January 1st, that bill goes out in July. So they're 6 months behind, and then there's the whole matter of collections, which adds another 6 months.
You're exactly right, because this
So-
bill is for 2016 tax levy distribution.
Right,
There's
And this
always
was
a
the
year
t-
delay.
And this,
Right.
and I didn't pay it until the October of 2016. You're
Right.
exactly right.
right.
Yeah,
So that's the same thing for our county taxes, well,
Yes.
that's the same thing for
Yeah.
our personal property taxes that we
Right.
get,
Right,
and for the fire fees that we get.
Okay.
right.
Well, with
Assuming
the,
that's all true, and we're gonna get a tax bill in July.
Mhm.
Is that tax bill gonna include a 25% increase on the fire fees?
It has been-
Because, or will it not, because
We're
we were
not sure.
talking
We
about
don't-
a year ago?
If it gets-
nobody can tell you that, and let me explain to you how, as a tax-paying citizen in this county, I was very dissatisfied with what I heard yesterday from the tax office. The reason they only did a 25% is because they could not figure it into their computer to do multiple figures for different districts, which makes absolutely
not
no
surprised.
sense to
That
me
does-
at all.
That does not
surprise
surprise
Not
me
with
at all.
technology that we have
I know
today,
the
but that
counties-
was the main excuse that we heard up there.
Okay.
So, you know, and here are the people that are doing my taxes now. I gotta wonder what's going on, and,
All right, I'm gonna
and
make a
we saw
proposal.
some of this during we asked for some information and didn't get information that we thought we should have.
This is just an aside, an analogy. I had a situation that didn't deal with the town. It dealt with the Property Owners Association, where there was a dispute. They got billed for something they shouldn't have gotten billed through the tax office. And we got it straightened out. I met with the attorney, we got it straightened out. He said, hey, you shouldn't have billed for it and whatever. He says, but don't pay it. He said, don't pay it because you'll never get it back again. They won't be able to figure out how to get it back to you.
That makes you feel real
That's-
good about
that's
the
what the attorney
system,
told me.
right?
Oh, my God, I'm not, again, I'm not surprised. Listen,
Susan?
I have a suggestion.
Whoever made the statement that we probably can't consider this as a done deal in this tax year
Listen.
for 18 is
No,
probably
no, no,
right.
No, I would suggest that the way we handle this at this point, this is only May, what's today, May 4th, something, right? Is today
May 4th, may the
May
4th
4th.
be with you.
Were you waiting all
We
day
are
to do
not
that?
officially
just
adopting
remembered
the
it from the
budget.
news
We'll
this
hold a
morning.
public hearing in early June. We meet June 26th to adopt the budget, okay? We have
That's not
a
on the
month and a half.
No, we don't.
That's the.
No, we
We
don't.
have,
We-
we have
We're
the hearing
holding
on
a
the fifth.
public hearing on this
On the fifth.
of June, that's what I said.
And you could vote on it on the fifth,
We
after the
could,
public
or
hearing.
we could wait until the June 26th meeting, which is what
But-
we've done for years, because
Mhm.
that's still within the fiscal
Mhm,
year.
mhm,
We're doing
mhm.
it before the new
And it's
fiscal year.
20 days after.
With any luck, maybe we'll have some more information on this. What I don't want to see is a tax bill going out in July that shows that on my bill is my normal property tax and a 25% increase in my fire fees. I suggest we take the next month and try and figure out how this is going to work. If in fact we're going to wind up getting billed that way, I would like to see a 1 cent decrease in our tax bill.
Well, let
to
me
try
go
and
ahead and
accommodate.
fill you in on the fact if the bill does not pass, the discussion yesterday led to there would be an 8-cent ad valorem fire tax put in the county.
Say that again?
8 cents is
Oh,
what they
and
talked
And
about
that's based on
yesterday.
property value.
And that was not
Yep.
based on fire districts. There's gonna be some more discussion on that. I don't agree with that, and that would be an 8-cent ad valorem all the way around the county. No
And that
ifs, ands.
we don't see it all,
No.
other than.
The only
Susan?
thing we would have the
does
option
a
to do
county tax.
is opt out of that if the municipality did not wanna do it.
So the county tax will go up 8 cents?
No, they'll be enacting a fire tax. The legislation's already out there for a fire tax. We had this discussion, and that is the only option they would have in July if they do not get the increase in fire fees.
Let's wait a few weeks.
Let's have Susan comment, please.
My only comment is that, until we know more, it's kind of white noise right here. I mean, and there's information that's going out that, you know, I don't want to, for people who are watching here to get overexcited about something that may or may not happen. We'll keep them informed as this progresses through the legislature or through the committees. I believe you had another reason why you're sitting at
Yeah.
that table.
Yeah, you know the reason I'm here. It's the
Well,
same
Better,
reason I'm here
before
every
you
year.
get there, if there was a major change, are we allowed to, in August, change the property tax rate, or is it too late?
This,
Are we stuck
Yeah.
with whatever we decide in June?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I will find out.
I bet we are.
It goes on our property tax bills that go out in July. Yeah, it's part of the bill there.
Let me,
You know something?
And that's
And
what
it
it
can't
is
be
for the
changed.
year.
Okay.
But we have to June, 21st of June.
So anyway, so I would propose
No,
that we
no,
wait a
I'm-
few weeks and then
Carol,
figure this out.
I like your suggestion until we can get the dust settled.
So the budget would be balanced.
In its budget, it's balanced now, with the discussion about the capital
Well,
improvement
the-
plan. Oh,
Well,
If we decided in June we wanted a 1 cent decrease, there's still, 1 cent increase is $140,000.
you can't, she's,
We
but
could
what
figure it
Lisa's
out.
saying, what Lisa's saying is if
Right now, we don't have
if
a-
we elect to wait, you don't have a balanced budget and you can't have a hearing. That's what Lisa's saying.
well, right now,
We have a balanced
Oh,
budget.
oh.
No, we don't, because we don't know, if you leave that contingency in there, she can't certify it as a balanced budget, and we can't have a public hearing.
And the budget is not balanced. There's a $140,000 surplus.
We're not
No,
finished yet.
no.
I understand that.
Um,
That's a different matter.
My statement
There's no
about the,
surplus
Hey,
based on
Bonnie?
these figures for fiscal 18, it's $1 million too.
Can we address and I'll get out of your hair. and
Well,
you can-
before you do, just for the public that may be sitting through this torture, if they're still around,
I think they're having a drink and a cigarette.
I'm joining them.
the issue, why we're even talking about just so they understand, and I don't want to go into a long explanation about it, but the reason why there's any relationship between a tax rate and a fire district fee is that Sunset Beach Fire District includes properties that are not within the municipality that only pay a fire fee. And the fire fees, as they are presently structured, and as if this is, the 25% increase goes through, do not fund the fire operation. And the town taxpayers, through their real property tax, pay the difference. So a house in Sunset Beach and a comparable house in a property outside of the municipality are paying two different amounts for the same coverage.
That's correct.
And that's why it's an issue as to how it would have an impact on property taxes. That,
You understand our concerns and our questions. How about if somebody does some research on all of this and we kind of wait a couple of weeks and see where we're going with all of this? But how do we solve your problem for June?
Let me, Lisa,
But right now, we have a balanced budget. Can't we if
Okay.
we
Yeah,
wanted to change it?
Where the money's coming from.
no, what I would
Well, right
suggest,
now, we haven't
what
done
I would
anything.
suggest
I'd
is
like
we
to
just totally forget
add
about
something.
any reduction attributable to this 25%
Right.
tax increase.
Right.
Have the budget come out with what we know, then it's gonna be in balance. Following the public hearing, you could make a change.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting,
then-
that, but
and
not
it-
to forget
Oh,
that we
but
may
I-
need to do an adjustment. Okay.
that's my question. And there are 20, and you have to have a certain amount of time, 20 days. or
I would
10
not put a lot of
between
faith
the public hearing
in
Would
this
we have enough
25%
time
being
between
done.
We'd have enough time
We'll have to
between
get,
June
Okay, I
5th
think.
We'll
I
have to
think
get
I
back
have
to you.
do it
26th.
the-
we'll
I
have to get back to you.
I can pretty well tell you,
The
you're not
latest
gonna
we
get
could
this
probably do is in
25%
July.
increase in before July.
15.
You're not gonna see it.
in before, no,
Yeah.
we just
In-
want to
in
know
our
where
fire
it's going.
fees.
It's not
Yeah,
gonna be authorized, it's not gonna be
No.
completely authorized.
No. It will not be.
So we need to assume it's not gonna happen then.
So it's gonna say same.
We have,
Oh, man.
we have a
But
month.
that's a
Same.
real,
Same.
I have a real problem with that.
We could refuse the
But we
money.
aren't the solution.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, I mean, there are things we could do, like we could opt out of the fire district.
There are things, but I really don't want to get into that discussion right now. I think at the beginning of this meeting earlier, you mentioned those two tax items, and I said you need to go forward without that consideration because it's such an unknown. If there are adjustments we need to do in the future, we will. But right now, I think we just need to move forward. And we will keep you
But you're saying
apprised.
we have a whole year before we can make an adjustment in that.
Well, you might have to.
In the
I mean,
tax rate,
You might have to.
only in
I-
the tax rate.
As I said, the notion of somebody opening up their tax bill in
Again,
July and finding a
Well,
25% increase.
we're in a very tight, it's not staff that's doing it, we're in a very tight time constraint regarding publication notices, and if you do amend a balanced budget, you're gonna have to repost, and, I mean, we're,
I think, Susan,
Yeah.
I don't think Carol's comments is directed at staff. I think
No,
she's addressing the system and the way.
as I
we're
am,
faced
that
with.
it's not, this timetable isn't being driven by staff, it's being driven by our waiting for legislation, or legislative action, meeting all our requirement notices for public hearings, and moving forward.
See what I see happening? And I
And it
may
may
not be up
happen.
here, is I can see doing nothing, they increase the tax rate in July or whatever, people are gonna get these
No,
bills.
they
A
increased the
year-
fire fee.
The
Fire
fire
fee,
fee,
not
I
that.
increase the fire fee, excuse me. A year is gonna go by and people are gonna have a 25% higher fire fee and the same property tax. That's what I'm
Kevin, what are you
thinking.
talking about, 25% increase, a couple $100 per house, or?
No, it's
Yeah.
like $25 a house.
Well,
What do you pay?
depends on
You
the
pay
house.
200 now, you'd pay 250.
Well, it depends on your square footage.
Right.
And
Yeah.
If Carol, to address what you said, and this is just a war story, is where I came from, the municipalities issue the tax bills, and it includes a municipal tax, a county tax, and a school tax. And the smallest percentage of that tax is municipalities. And every year on July 1st, when those tax bills go out, the municipality catches hell from all the taxpayers because the tax rate went up. They're paying more taxes. And it's not necessarily the municipality. I mean, it happened where I came from. It's the county was driving it, or the Board of Education was driving it. And when I used to do budget presentations, in order to satisfy that, I'd blow up a dollar bill. And I'd say, this portion is municipality, this portion is school, and this portion is county, and this is the only part we control. So don't pick on us
Oh,
about
well,
it.
but
And
in
just so,
this case, those fire fees are still part of our budget, so
Okay.
it's really
and
not quite
and
the
just
same.
so I can be very clear, I do not agree with this system. I don't think it's a fair system. And I've never from anywhere else I've ever came from, I never dealt with a system like this. I feel like the two people that were on the board with me and the gentleman that was appointed by the county felt the exact same way, that it just didn't make sense.
And for the public, I should say, the fire district committee, it wasn't unanimous, but the Sunset Beach Fire District Fee Committee voted to increase this substantially, to bring it revenue neutral with regard to each property inside and outside. And obviously, we didn't carry the day, and did a staffed paper as the justification for it. I'm sorry, Kevin, I'm taking your time.
You had a reason for
Well, you know, we talked about it in the meeting on the 1st. I brought in some information so you could see what the things that I'm dealing with, and, you know, my biggest and greatest need. I've got the greatest equipment in the world, but half the time I don't have enough people to run the equipment I have. And I'm gonna use Councilman Larkin as an example. He's leaving this weekend, one of my volunteers that I count on and rely on, and he's gonna be gone on a long trip. That's one less guy.
I love this. He always talks to me.
Huh?
You always talk to me. I love it.
because you're the swing vote.
Nobody else is making eye contact. You're the only one making eye contact, so I gotta look
God,
at
that's
somebody.
too
Oh, there, I got an eye, I got a guy. But just, you know, that is our biggest need, and it is a need that I've had since since before I took over. I just feel it's something I need to go on record as asking every year, let you know.
I
We're
remember
at,
you clearly stating, when you were interviewed for the fire chief position, you said, we don't need that increase in staffing.
that
That's what
is,
you said.
no, that is not correct. No. No, I'll
You did
disagree
not
with
agree
you.
with your predecessor. Oh, that was, it's clear as a bell to me.
That was 10 years ago.
It's still,
No.
Yes,
5 years ago?
almost 6 years ago. But I remember clearly the very first time, I got the job in May, went to a budget meeting with you guys right there and said, I need 12 people. That was back before I had any volunteers.
Well, you have 14 now, don't you?
Yeah. Spread out between
wanted
2
12 more.
stations.
I understand that, but Bob said
There's not been
something.
an increase since I've been the chief.
No, I mean, what did you say, Bob? Same? You- Bob said same. You know, you can see how our fixed costs are beginning to explode. There's gotta be a balancing act somewhere, people. Because, like I said before, and I'll repeat it 1,000 times, inflation's 1.9% with medical cost included. This ain't, you know, I can visualize a 20 or 25-cent tax rate at some point if we don't look at long-term and begin to control these expenses. You know, I don't want to get into a debate about fire station number 1 and fire station number 2. I can't fix history, but look at the fixed costs that we've added to this town. We're only a population of 3,700 people, permanent.
44.
Yeah.
3,700 people. I mean, think about
I
it.
would have
Our
said
average age,
3,800. I love this. We don't even know what our,
population
Yep.
is.
Our
I'm
average
thinking
age-
of registered voters.
our
not
average
population.
age is
That's
66
different.
years of age.
Population.
We don't have fires, we have medical calls.
Oh, we don't have fires.
We,
B- you
we
know,
don't have as many
We've had a
fires.
lot of fires
We
recently.
understand that.
That's not what I'm saying, Kevin. We have fires. We don't have fires like any major city would have a fire, okay? We're not as busy as a major city.
Last time I checked, fire burns the same no matter where you're
I
at.
understand that, Kevin. That's not what I'm saying. The activity that we have is more for medical than it is for fire. That's all I'm saying.
In all
And-
fairness.
and in
but
all
Rich,
fairness-
even you, in all fairness to him, it just takes one major fire. I mean, it just takes
I
one
know,
thing getting
yeah.
out of control.
Oh, there's no question,
So-
Carol. I understand that.
One major fire, but I'm not concerned about the fire getting out of control. I'm concerned about my people getting hurt, trying to do too much. And I have witnessed it time and time again here, where we're doing what I call suicide firemen. We're coming out, putting another pack on, and going right back because there's nobody else. And we're doing that, and we've got to stop it. And I know you've said we've got mutual
What are the
aid.
other towns doing? Right.
They're in the same boat we are.
And there's a reason for that.
But, you
We're all
know-
small towns and we cannot
Not that- that's-
afford
that's
to
one of-
have that
That
kind of
is one of the
coverage.
reasons this is being addressed with the county, because everybody is in the same boat. These people that used to mutual aid us can't hardly do it anymore. They're having fires the same time we are. You know, we have a major storm, and we had 3 going in one night. 3. I ended up driving a truck in and being the incident command plus the guy that was on the end of the hose. So, I mean, I'm a chief officer. That shouldn't be happening. When you run out of people that quickly, that's a bad thing. And we're running out of people that quickly.
But when we have a fire, Kevin, there seems to be broad municipal support. Calabash, Griswold,
There's
Oceanite. I mean,
2
it's
guys
all
in a
mutual.
truck. 2 guys in a truck. That's all you're getting.
Chief, what I think some people see is they see the fire scene an hour after it started.
I know.
They're not seeing a fire scene 9 minutes after it started. When firefighters are trying to save people, when they're trying to stay safe themselves. Now, there's a huge difference in those 2 different times, an hour versus 9 minutes.
But believe me, I know what I'm asking for, and I know what it costs, and I know what it takes to make that decision on your part. I am here pleading my case, and I'm letting you know what
And
I
what does
need
it
more
cost?
than anything.
So what is the cost for?
For 6
cost?
people,
For one,
$325,000 a year, that's including the benefits. That
How
is
much?
$325,000.
For the first year and it
Ye-
keeps going.
Well, I mean, if we continue to
That's
keep them.
3 cents on the tax rate is really what you're talking about.
Yeah, a little less than a vacuum truck.
That's a one-time purchase.
No, I know.
Okay, you've asked.
I've said my piece, and I know you have a decision to make, and that's up to you.
Kevin, does the personnel have any, the number of personnel have any input in the fire rating?
It does.
In your rating?
Yes, it would. I mean, it does. I mean,
how does it in fact affect it?
well, I mean, one of the reasons we didn't go to a 3 was a lack of response on personnel. We weren't getting our ladder truck to the scene. We are not getting equipment that should be there to the scene. So we were deducted points for that.
So
And
we're,
so
we
by
are
not being
rating
a
now.
3,
We're at a 4.
Okay, and if we went to a 3, I don't think people's individual insurance rates would go down, is that correct? I
Yours,
don't think there's a
yours
difference
may not.
between a 3 and a 4.
But business owners,
All right, but for the population of
And-
this
and-
town, they're not gonna see a decrease.
well, I
in
don't
their
know if that's
insurance.
a true statement or not, because what I was told, and I may be misquoting, but I was called by an insurance company. People that have their houses in LLCs or rentals, they can receive a benefit because they consider it a business. So it's commercial property, even if they own a beach house that's on a rent,
It's
they get a
higher,
reduction.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just a few that are set up like that.
And I don't know how many, but I mean, that
All
there
right,
is the
so,
cost.
you know, you could say to the town, make a choice. Increase, you have a choice between like leaf and limb or increasing staffing for the fire department. No, that's one possibility. Don't do A in order to pay B. So, you know, if we could figure that out, we'd be probably much more amenable, but it's not your job to find
No,
ways for us to cut other costs.
Well, maybe we should give the task to Bonnie and Susan and Lisa, find money in the budget to justify the $325,000. Let's cut someplace.
A year.
A year.
So it needs to be recurring expenditures.
And there's some
not
grant
coming
money
out
out
of
there,
the
right,
general
Kevin?
fund. No, the grant money only covers for a short time.
It-
I understand, but
it-
still.
it's, well, we've looked into, and we have applied for federal grants in the past. We've used a guy that worked at FEMA, he's retired, and our chances of getting a grant due to the fact that we're not considered a low-income area. We're gonna be last priority in the grant process, and that's proven true on several
So
occasions.
it's justified by income.
Yes. They're gonna look at the fact that we're not a poor community, and they're gonna say, yeah, there's gonna be other priorities first. I mean, it's not saying that I wouldn't put in for it. I mean, I'd be more than happy to fill out the grant, I've done it before. I'd be more than happy to go for the grant, but I would want your permission.
Find 6 positions to cut.
Chief Wood, we're talking about, right now, we put 2 firefighters on a piece of equipment, one from Station 1, one from Station 2, because I think as everybody knows, when there's a fire alarm activation or a structure fire, both stations respond within Sunset Beach. Medical's only one station responds, depending upon the way they've divvied up the district. I think what you're asking for is, instead of 2 people on each truck from each station, there'd be 3. So the-
Currently, if you'll read the law, if you read what's going on right now, when my first arriving engine gets on scene, or pumper, to make it easier, the first arriving, they can do nothing. They can do hardly anything. I have one guy who runs the truck, and the other guy stands there and waits. By law, and it's right here, I gave it to you, he is not allowed to enter that building.
Can you do size up?
He
Oh,
can do the
size up
size
only?
up, but you're losing minutes.
Sure.
Every time you're standing there watching the fire burn, and you're losing minutes.
Chief, if you had 3 people on one truck and 2 people on another, is that just throwing good money after bad, or is it?
Yeah, so you need 2. You need 4 people
No, he's.
I have-
to show up at
I-
the scene, right?
I have 3 shifts.
I know, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, if you show up at a fire, what you want are 4 people on that truck.
He
2
wants
in,
3
2 out.
people on that truck.
With 6 people, I can put 3 people on each truck
He right now has
during
2
the shift.
people
Right
on
now,
each
there's
truck.
just 2.
But you don't get 2 in, 2 out. What happened to that? I thought you wanted 4 in each truck if you were responding to a fire.
Oh, he'd
That-
take
That's a
12.
long-term goal, but that would be 12 personnel.
he'd take
That would be the
12.
12 that I've originally asked for. I'm breaking it down. I'm trying to put
If
some
you have
people.
3 people, can somebody go in?
The 2 people can go in. And here's the way we're gonna get away with that if you'll read the
Well,
law.
right now, why can't 1 person go in? Because you don't want to send 1 person in by themselves.
No, and one person's not allowed by law to
I
go
got it.
by
Okay.
themselves. And that's the problem. And right now, when I show up, I have a captain and a pump operator. I have nobody for that captain to operate with. I have nobody for that lieutenant to operate with. And somebody said, well, you can wait on the other. Time is precious when you're talking about fire. And I know you
am
understand that, but
sympathetic. I do understand
but the
that.
question I've been asked, and I want this out there for everybody to hear, is they have that much time to respond over to that area when there's a fire, and they have this much time. There's a time lapse that we're not getting what we need done there. Now, it works out great if him and I are in town or not at a budget meeting like we are right now, because we're still able to do what I can take command and he can still run with a hose.
Well, I'm just saying, I go back to the thing, maybe this is an issue the town should be deciding. I don't know how, I don't know why, but do people want more fire things, or they want less services? I mean,
Well,
nobody wants
but
their
that's-
taxes
But
going
that's
up.
that's our charge as town council, is to determine public safety issues. You can't put this out for a referendum. It's people making the decision here need to understand the ramifications of 2 firefighters showing up on a scene, and there's somebody in the building that needs to be rescued.
I mean, and we know you've gone back to, we have a lot of medical calls. That's true. But a cardiac arrest, I have to roll both stations to a cardiac arrest, because I don't know if you've done CPR. It's quite a workout. And the way we do it now with this hypothermia, we stay on and do a pit crew style CPR, because we're going to work them for 30 to 35 minutes before we put them in the truck and go. So, I mean, that also has increased, and that takes, when that happens, I've got nothing left. Especially if my volunteers are out of town.
That's why I
Or
go
it's a
back to saying,
vacation.
Maybe we're doing certain services that are not as important, and maybe we shouldn't, in order to pay for this, we don't do something else.
Yeah, but that's
I mean,
difficult.
that's a big conversation.
With a
And that's a conversation that you guys need to have.
You-
I've made my presentation.
I mean, if Susan came to us
$25,000 more for the fire department, but this is what we can do. We can offload $325,000 here each year. If it's zero
can't.
sum,
You can't.
and if it supports public safety, I'm for it.
Chief, I don't know that I got an answer to my question, or I don't know that I even asked it properly. What you're looking for is 3 people at Station 1 and 3 people at Station 2 at all times,
That is correct.
because they're responding in different engines. If you had 3 people at one station and 2 people at another, is that just throwing good money after bad? That really isn't gaining the improvement or
Luck
more
of the
being...
draw, 50-50 whether or not you'll get the, when you need it at the right place. right?
Anything would help.
And it's shooting the dice.
Anything would help.
I've got a kind of a basic question. Are we at the point in our budget discussions where we can sit down and run our numbers and saying, this is all we've agreed on, and this is all the budget that's coming in, and this is how much we still have left to, whether we have left to play with, and whether we can do that with a 1% tax cut or not? Now, I mean, do we have that type of information? You feed it back to us? In
Well,
other words, can we,
I-
within where we are right now, can we still afford the 6 policemen and still give a 1% tax cut?
Oh, Lord.
I think we already,
Huh?
I
No.
think we've already decided we can't do a tax
No.
cut now.
I'm just asking the question on,
No,
on all of
no.
this.
No,
We've
well-
already, for those of us pushing for one, we've already decided we can't. So you're,
Well, I think the result was administratively you can't because of the timing on everything.
no, we looked at the capital improvement plan and the items in 18, and the little money that we have extra in 18 before even taking those into consideration.
Which is,
And I think we decided that
Well,
we can't afford to do that.
either I was asleep or you made a different conclusion than I did, because what my understanding was, the discussion was, we can't do it now because
Not just
we
for the
have the
fire
revenue, we have to have a revenue neutral, I mean, we have to have a balanced
Budget.
budget before we can have a hearing, and if there's gonna be any adjustment at all in the tax rate, then we'd have to have another hearing. That's what we talked about.
But that was in
Well-
relation to the fire piece.
Yeah.
Before we got to that, we were talking generally about a tax cut, and we said we could not do that. Is that correct, Rich? You
I
agree with
didn't,
that?
I didn't recall voting on not doing
were
a tax
We
cut.
didn't vote
discussing-
one
we
way or
didn't
the other.
vote.
No.
We
Yeah.
didn't
Didn't vote
vote.
one way or
But
the
do you agree with that conclusion? So I'm saying, well, I think we're all on the same page, that as part of our budget discussion,
I mean,
that we're leaving the tax rate as 16 cents and 100.
Presently, we have, if I'm correct, Bonnie, presently we have a surplus. Revenues exceed expenses.
yes, well, based on what you decided about the CIP, what to fund in fiscal 18, now we don't.
Yeah.
We don't have enough money, Rich.
Well,
It's going to come out of the reserve fund.
yeah. So,
But we can take money out of our reserved account to pay for some of these fiscal year 18 non-budgeted items.
yes.
Right.
Yes. Well, summarized all these moving parts, we have 100, if we leave out the FEMA's reimbursement from Hurricane Matthew,
Right, right.
we have 145,000 more in revenue than expenses before we get to the
$1,200,000.
unbudgeted CIP.
Which is $1 million.
Will we
too.
let
Right.
her,
And s-
Bonnie, explain it,
So-
please? Please. I'm having trouble following everything with the sidebar
Okay.
objections.
Okay. We're starting with 145,000, essentially. We have, have money from FEMA that we can also spend, but just in terms of non-recurring operating needs, we have a gap between the revenue and expenditures of 145,000, which is basically 1 penny on the tax rate. Then we have a fire department roof that needs an engineering study, that's 50,000. So now we're down to 90,000, which dispenses with the penny on the tax rate. And now we have a need for additional personnel of 3 times that. We're starting with 90,000. In order to get 6 firefighters, we need 320,000. And we still have outstanding capital items that appear, that need to be
Like $1
funded.
million,
That need
Appear
to
to
be
be coming
funded.
out of one of the reserve funds.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So,
I just want to point out that it is, it's not prudent, if you're thinking about this, to fund personnel to reserve. It
No.
should be
No.
through the I just want to make sure it's
Yeah.
clear.
So we basically have 90,000 to work with in order to start addressing the 6 firefighter addition.
So Bonnie, you said you were gonna clean up the budget. Can we relook at it and see what we can do for the fire department without raising the tax rate at all?
That's not what she was gonna do. You're asking her to find
Right.
other cuts?
I'm
Well,
fine.
I might
let her
make
answer the
this-
question.
The short answer is, you have to tell me what you want to cut. We have to cut. We have a gap, we're $90,000, we have $90,000 to work with in order to fund, currently, in order to fund 325,000. So something's got to give.
You could take the 50,000 engineering study for the fire department roof out of reserve.
We could, that's a start. So now we're up to 145. So we're halfway there, almost, halfway there.
That's yearly though.
What's that?
That's for
I'm
1 year.
jumping-
Right.
I
We
don't know if
have-
we're jumping the gun.
And I may make a
Let,
suggestion.
Oh my
let Bonnie
God.
finish, okay? Let Bonnie finish.
I would make a suggestion. We have the biggest elephant in the room is what's going to happen with fire fees. This is an ongoing problem, a long-standing problem. The fire fees are a very big elephant. Depending on what the county decides to do, depending on what the legislature funds, we're going to have to revisit this anyway. May I make a suggestion? Because of the time problem with having the public hearing and approving the budget, there's a statutory requirement. We're running up against a big deadline, a hard and fast deadline. If we punt the whole thing until we know what the fire fees are, we can't change the tax rate. It looks like, I mean, that's the only reason why we can't address this in July or August, is because once the tax rate is certified, we're stuck with it for the year. But these problems are not going to be resolved until sometime in the year. And at that point, you can do a budget amendment to make the corrections. The only thing you can't change is the tax rate. So if we agree not to change the tax rate, everything else can be postponed until we have a complete picture of what the money is going to be.
But it does seem like we've got enough money to put one firefighter on, 145, half of what
Mhm.
the chiefs are asking for,
Or two,
and agree to that now,
53 a person.
and then one.
Pete, I'm listening and I agree with you, but I'd rather put it off until June until we know a little bit more about the tax rate.
Well, you mean
I'd
like
to
August,
point
August.
something- I'd like to point something out. With a 25% fire fee increase, even if that gets approved, you said it brings in how much more?
$240,000.
That's not even enough to cover what he's asking for, which means, right now, one of the reasons we liked the notion of the increase in fire fees is so that people outside the jurisdiction would be paying a little more of their fair share. You'd be making the situation even worse than it is currently, because they're not gonna be paying their full share if you start you're burdening our taxpayers.
I'm a little confused. Have we approved the additional firemen? I mean,
No.
No,
No,
no, no.
no.
That's what we're
no.
talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know
So-
by Rich, if we can do it at all. Where would we do it? With the fire tax, we could have to maybe bring 1 or 2 on.
I think, Rich, the position is there's appears to be decided sympathy for the need.
Now we have to find out how we pay for it.
And we can't pay for it. We can pay for one, but we can't pay for two.
We can't, unless there's a zero sum, we can't pay for any than what we have. We cannot continue to increase our fixed cost. We can't, people.
That's been my mantra for 8 years, sorry. I agree.
There's no,
Every time I turn around, there's more personnel keeps getting added in, and we're a small town, we haven't grown, you've made this statement. We're not growing, we're not annexing anybody else, our population is pretty much fixed.
But it's not for me. It is for you inside the city limits, but it's not for me. It's growing like a weed right outside our city limits. Have you been into Sunset Ridge and looked at how many houses they've put in there?
Yeah, which seems so
158.
unfair to our own taxpayers.
I 100% agree with that.
I know it's.
I
there's-
100% agree
Yeah.
with that. I'm in the same situation. I live in the city of Charlotte, and I do the same thing.
I-
So I 100%,
I can add to what Kevin
Understand
said.
it.
The county just approved 158 units behind the old
Piggly Wiggly. So, I mean, I'm growing outside,
That sounds like
and that's the issue that I deal with. That, I mean, I've got all those that are going up. I mean,
It's Ocean Isles. Is it in Ocean Isles Fire District?
No, it's in our district.
in ours.
Even
right,
though
Susan.
they're paying property taxes to Ocean Isle, but they're not.
No, they're paying
No.
county,
The
period.
county thing.
That's it.
She just asked me, is it Ocean Isle? And so the answer is no.
No, it's not in the city limits of Ocean Isle. City limits
Half
of
of-
Ocean Isle stop at the stoplight.
Half
So
of,
what are we gonna do?
half
We're
of
gonna
Ocean Ridge is
defer
our
this
fire
until
district.
after June to talk about it more, or August, when we find out the tax, the fire?
What we need to know, at least what Bonnie needs to know and I need to know, is whether or not there's appetite from this council to look at funding additional firefighters. If the answer is yes, then we need direction as to how many. And, you know, if we're looking at services again, you know, what do you want to cut? And I have to tell you, there's not a lot to cut in this budget.
$334,000.
well, let's take this one step at a time. I said that there appeared to be sympathy for the need for additional people. Does everybody agree with me?
I agree.
All right. That's not a commitment to hire additional people. That's just
This is sympathy.
the, the next question is, how do we address that need? And do we want to address that? First, the first question would be, do we want to address that need?
Maybe since we're being asked to wait on the whole fire fee thing anyway, we should put off that discussion until we know what's gonna happen and what the county is gonna do, and, you know, people can think about it, but I'm not
That's your
raising-
decision.
Bonnie-
Aren't
That's
if
your
I'm gonna
Bonnie
raise
has-
our
Bonnie has a
property
state.
taxes
A
to
light
cover
bulb just
additional
went
stuff.
off.
Whoops.
Do you remember that list of non-recurring items? I gave, you, Rich, you asked for a list of non-recurring items. It's 665,000, something like that. Some of those things could be funded. They're one-time, big-ticket items.
But there are always one-time
Yes,
items.
yes.
Always.
But so, but they are things that have been deferred for a great number of years.
Fund them through the reserve?
Correct. And that way, because they're part of, see, we have the budget that's recommended includes $665,000 worth of non-recurring items.
What do you mean,
Right.
like, financial software?
Yes.
Correct. We're not gonna have to buy that again next year.
Yeah.
But you're gonna, Bonnie, if you look at these things every year, it's
Yes.
about the same amount of money for these one-time only
Yes.
things. You can't go back and say, I'm gonna pull it out of the reserves, because at some point, you're gonna deplete your reserves.
That's
And
correct.
you're not
That's
adding
correct.
anything in, because your
What we,
fixed costs now are gonna be so much higher.
right,
You'll never
no,
get money.
that's
Bonnie,
correct. And so
Bonnie,
it's- it
if
becomes
you and
a fil-
Susan could come back and say, you know, we want 2 firefighters that cost $70,000 a year, but we're gonna reduce other fixed costs by $70,000 a year, and this is the offset. We'll
And
listen
not out of
to
the
it.
reserve.
Not out of the reserves, out of the fixed cost.
okay,
Here's a one-time cost, contract services, meeting minutes archiving, $50,000.
right.
All right, let me suggest this. We
Next
can-
year, it'll be a telephone, you know,
Wait,
Well,
another system.
let me
Let
put
me-
it in
something.
perspective. If these things had been purchased 10 years ago, 5 years ago, the money wouldn't even exist in the fund balance. It would have been part of the regular operating cost. So that money, instead of addressing a longstanding problem, the money was socked away in the savings account and became unavailable to fund daily operations.
All right, now
And as a result, Lisa's activity since then has been expanded because she hasn't had the technological tool that would have made her job more efficient.
let me suggest this, and Susan and Bonnie tell me if this can't be done, because I mean, it may not be able to be done. Today, we have to give you direction as to what the budget's gonna look like. We gotta know how much revenue we're gonna bring in and how much expenses are gonna be. The, and this kinda ties in with that fire fee discourse we had. The, actual application of that doesn't have to take place, I mean, you gotta have a substantial roadmap, but the minute application of that doesn't have to take place before June 5th. And if we're gonna, I mean, like the source of funding for things doesn't have to be specific by June 5th, correct? For everything, for some things it does.
Well, it needs to be part of the public hearing, which is
I
on June
understand.
5th.
We have to have a balanced budget.
Well, the balancing is not a problem, because we have the fund balance,
Right.
that's
It's
our
just taking
balancing
a lot
Well,
of
factor,
see,
that's
we're-
our balancing.
What I'm trying to address, is the situation where it's an impossibility between now and June 5th to get the information that everybody's asking for and have a balanced budget to present for the June 5th meeting. That's a physical impossibility, because we don't have another meeting. And there's no way the council's gonna get together to say, yeah, that's the budget we want to present for the hearing.
So you would have.
And we can't change it after the hearing without having another hearing, which puts us in a problem for doing it before the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
What I'm trying to address is how we solve that problem. If we know what the revenues are, we know what the expenses are, and if there is a way that some money, whether it's $350,000 or whether it's $70,000, if there's a way to be found without interfering with the
Yes.
time requirements for the passage of the budget and the budget hearing,
Yes,
it could be done.
yes.
That's what
It
I'm
can
trying to
be done.
address.
Everything you do.
I would suggest that the only way you're gonna do that at this point is by either having nothing going into, and in fact, we're really, right now, with what we've agreed to today, you have nothing going into the reserve. You may have 140,000
Right.
out there, but you're talking about $1.2 million that has to be funded right now that we all approved today for fiscal 18. So it's, that 140 will be used, and the rest of that $1.2 million is coming out of the reserves.
Right.
But every,
So, and we said we were putting off the fire thing. I would suggest we simply put this discussion off right now for purposes of coming up with our June budget, schedule our meeting, do the things we all agreed to today. We'll see how the fire thing works out in July and August. You've got time to worry about next year.
I have a question.
I mean, the year after, I guess.
Go ahead, Susan. You
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry. I always just wait.
Oh,
A lot. I absolutely agree with Carol on this point. I think we need to move forward. We can revisit the firefighters after July 1st, after the legislation session is done. We can make changes at that point in time, just not to the tax rate. You'll have more information in front of you to do that. And if we need to do amendment regarding where expenses are being drawn from, we can do it after the.
Well, that's where I was going.
I was
is
just
it-
thinking
now-
about another,
Now, the next step is, does the council agree that they want Bonnie and Susan to address that, not before with regard to the adoption of the budget, but to address that, a source of funding for additional personnel?
I'm not
may I
ready to
ask my
commit at
question
this
first?
point.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm not ready there, Bob.
John, go
Okay,
ahead.
the question I had, if I recall correctly, in the audit, they said our reserve fund was at 110%? Okay, and then somewhere along the line, we've had this guidance to have 75% in the reserve fund is what the optimum that I think.
that the
No,
council
it was a
decided.
suggestion,
The-
the
yeah.
optimum would be 100% to go for a year
Well,
after.
yeah, the 40%.
No, that's
Yeah.
what's required, that's not
Okay,
necessarily what
so
they
my
think is the right
question
answer.
is, if we're sitting at the 110% and we have $6 million roughly in the reserve fund, to take it down to either 100% or take it down to 75%, that gives us, if you will, a area where we can make commitments out of our reserve fund to do combination one-time purposes and other things. Clearing a backlog, and a lot of this stuff that we've had has been a backlog of things that needed to be done that have been deferred, resolving those. and still leaving us some flexibility to
John.
hire additional firemen. Is that correct?
No,
Yes.
you do understand that when we fund that $1,000,002, which is in there for fiscal 18, that's gonna bring that reserve from 110% right down to God knows what.
Well,
but
that's
close
what I'm
to
asking,
75.
that's what I'm asking, is
Yeah.
it, where's it come down to, and do we have
You have to-
fudge room to do that as an option? The second question I have actually, though, is just to be clear, if we postpone this fireman hiring and the fire fees until after July 1st, we still would have the flexibility to, if we wanted to make a decision to hire 6 more firemen, to do that during the course of the year. Okay.
What I suggest,
Mayor, let me answer a question that John just asked, and Carol was asking. If we fund $1,000,002 out of our 110% of annual operating expenses, that's about 22% of it. So we'd be lowering it by 22%, which would get us down to, I'll say, 185%. I'm sorry, 85%.
all right, I'm gonna make a suggestion. It's obvious at least 2 councilpeople are not prepared to move forward with discussion, with more concrete discussion with regard to the hiring of anybody else. So unless the council's prepared to vote on that, what I suggest we do is that we confirm the budget so they can go ahead and get it in a position that it can be, we can go forward with the hearing, that we have the hearing, and that we put down on the agenda for a discussion of whether we want to have Bonnie and Susan look into sources of money, funding for additional personnel. 'Cause unless you're going to do it today, that's the only other way to do it.
That sounds good, Mayor. I'd like to ask a question
I'm
of,
not even ready to go there.
let me ask a question of
It's
Susan and
too
Bonnie.
fast for me, Bob.
If
I'm a
we,
slow guy.
if in your plan right now, you allocate something to come out, expenditure to come out of reserve fund, or out of ad valorem taxes, can we change that routing in August to something different? Because there's some
Yeah, I
things that
believe
are
so.
appropriate everything's appropriate to come out of ad valorem taxes, but there's only certain things that are appropriate to come out of reserve fund, such as, you said
Just
you.
not operations. I
Okay,
mean,
you
I
said
don't
you-
recommend
you
it. I
didn't
don't
want
recommend
salaries
it.
coming out of,
Yeah, I
it
don't
wasn't
recommend
appropriate.
operations, yeah.
Let me just,
You asked for a vote today.
So I know
right?
nobody's
You may
asking,
not
we're
want-
not
you
gonna
may
ask for a
not
vote
want
today.
today.
All we're gonna ask for a vote,
Think about it.
all we're gonna ask, what I just said is, all we're gonna ask for a vote today
Yes.
is on the budget, absent any additional personnel. That's the
Okay.
only thing that we're gonna act on. Whether there's gonna be any discussion, or it's gonna be on agenda, whatever, is gonna be for future. Yeah, but in any event, the only thing we need to do today is to authorize, vote and authorize that this budget go forward for the hearing,
Okay,
all right?
Sounds good.
so say so moved.
Anybody have a problem with that?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Ken.
Bob,
Thank you.
You made some inroads, Kevin.
Bob, same?
You made some inroads.
You know where that comes from? You know?
I got a headache.
Yes, because this is your last workshop.
There's nothing else that anybody needs to, I don't want to say conceive of, needs to address with,
Bonnie, I'm not gonna
budget.
bother you anymore.
then entertain a motion to adjourn the budget workshops.
So move it.
All those in favor?
Bonnie, you happy now? You can go home at 5? Huh?
Actually, I was gonna go home at 3. At 10 of, as a matter of fact. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.